Chapter 1043. It was a young man with a determined face. His eyebrows exuded an air of arrogance. He looked very cold and unapproachable. However, his aura was very weak. It seemed that he was only at the chi refining stage. He sat in the corner and was inconspicuous. No one would look at him. What was strange was that he carried a broadsword on his back. The broadsword was very heavy. It was made of ordinary black iron and was even covered with cracks. It looked like it would break into a pile of scrap iron with a slight touch. He sat alone and listened to the conversation of the cultivators in the inn. He did not say much and just drank his wine without any sadness or joy. After a while, a strong aura came from the door and shocked the entire inn. The inn suddenly quieted down. A young man stood at the door. He looked to be in his 30s. His eyebrows were like swords and his eyes were like torches. He was not tall, but he attracted everyone's attention. This person's aura was like a vast ocean, surging up and down. It was like a mountain that pressed down on everyone's heart, making them feel extremely heavy. A tribulation stage expert. Everyone in the inn looked at the man in front of them in surprise. In the battle between Yumon and the cultivators, the tribulation stage experts of the 8 sects had all come out. Every tribulation stage expert was a big shot who stirred up a storm. They had all seen the aura of a tribulation stage expert. However, no one recognized this young man in front of them. Such a young tribulation stage expert? Who is this person? This is the uniform of the Sword Cleansing Valley. He's from the Sword Cleansing Valley. Some sharp-eyed cultivators had figured out this person's origin. The genius of the Sword Cleansing Valley. Everyone looked at the young man in awe. The Sword Cleansing Valley was also a powerful sect. Although its overall strength was not as strong as the 8 sects, it was not far off. The people in the sect were all named after swords. There were many people in the younger generation who were famous. 7 or 8 of them were even on the Supreme Immortal Ranking Board. As soon as this man stepped into the inn, he did not hide his aura at all. His terrifying aura suppressed everyone in the inn, making them fearful. Rumor has it that the Sword Cleansing Valley has an unparalleled genius named Heavenly Spine Sword. When the Supreme Immortal Ranking Board was first released, he became the 23rd person on the Supreme Immortal Ranking Board. His ranking has not changed since then. Could it be him? Heavenly Spine Sword? I've also heard of this person. It must be him. The people in the inn suddenly started to talk about it. Many people also exclaimed out loud. If it was really the Heavenly Spine Sword, then this person was absolutely a monstrous existence. This was because the strongest of the younger generation in the Sword Cleansing Valley was him. His swordsmanship was unparalleled. The man's eyes flickered with a cold light, like a sharp sword light, making people not dare to look at him directly. He didn't pay attention to the discussions of others. Instead, his gaze fell on the young man with a broadsword on his back in the corner. Then, he slowly walked towards the young man with a broadsword. The broadsword young man was still drinking and did not look at the people of the Sword-Washing Valley. He also turned a deaf ear to the discussions around him. "Can I sit in this seat?" the man from the Sword-Washing Valley asked. "That depends on whether you have the qualifications to sit there." The broadsword young man poured himself a glass of wine indifferently. "Is the name of Heavenly Spine Sword qualified?" the man from Sword Cleansing Valley asked coldly. It really was him. Everyone in the inn was secretly shocked. Originally, they were just guessing about this man from the Sword Cleansing Valley. They didn't expect this person to be the Heavenly Spine Sword. The Heavenly Spine Sword was the first person in the Sword Cleansing Valley to reach the Crossing Calamity stage before the age of 40. Such talent was incomparably heaven-defying even among the 8 sects. I didn't expect the Heavenly Spine Sword to be so young. With such an outstanding talent, he must be one of the 9 Shin Immortals. Yes, as long as he obtains the power of the Supreme Immortal Tablet and becomes one of the 9 Shin Immortals, then Yumon won't be a problem. Everyone's eyes lit up as they looked at the Heavenly Spine Sword with anticipation. They wanted to see something from the Heavenly Spine Sword. However, many people also looked at the broadsword young man. This strange young man who looked like he was only at the chi cultivation stage, and the Heavenly Spine Sword were like heaven and earth. What they didn't understand was why the heavenly spine sword was looking for trouble with this young man with a broken broadsword. The broadsword young man looked at the heavenly spine sword indifferently and said contemptuously, "You don't have the qualifications." Wow. As soon as the broadsword young man finished speaking, the entire inn was in an uproar. Who is this person? How dare he speak to the heavenly spine, sword of the sword, cleansing valley like that? Is he courting death? A mere chi cultivation stage, cultivator dares to offend the heavenly spine sword? He must be tired of living. The self-cultivators in the inn began to criticize the broadsword young man for not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth. He actually dared to speak to the #1 genius of the sword cleansing valley like that. The heavenly spine sword was now a tribulation passing stage genius. In everyone's opinion, a tribulation passing stage genius and a member of the supreme immortal ranking would definitely become one of the 9 Shin immortals. In the future, he would definitely lead everyone to defeat Yaman. However, a young man with a broken iron sword dared to be so disrespectful to the heavenly spine sword. Everyone looked at the broadsword young man with pity as if he was already a corpse. The heavenly spine sword's cold gaze pierced the broadsword young man's body. The piercing cold gaze seemed to penetrate through the young man. A terrifying aura swept through everyone in the inn like a stormy sea. All the self-cultivators in the inn looked at the heavenly spine sword in horror and were already drenched in cold sweat. "You are very arrogant," the heavenly spine sword said coldly. The broadsword young man took a sip of wine and said indifferently, "Fuck off." It's not surprising that someone who dares to talk to the heavenly spine sword like that would be killed. This was the thought of all the self-cultivators in the inn. The heavenly spine sword looked at the broadsword on the young man's back and smiled. Even though it was a smile, it was very cold. "I heard that Gu Etienne used an ordinary iron sword to travel the self-cultivator world. I wanted to see it for a long time." Gu Etienne. The entire inn was shocked again. There were many strange geniuses in the self-cultivator world, and Gu Etienne was one of them. No one knew which sect Gu Etienne came from. He was a rising star who relied on an ordinary iron sword to force his way into the supreme immortal ranking. Originally, people thought he was from the Sword Cleansing Valley until he killed a genius from the Sword Cleansing Valley. Then they realized he wasn't from the Sword Cleansing Valley. Before Gu Etienne became famous, there was a powerful sword cultivator in the self-cultivator world named Broken Sword. Broken Sword was also a nameless master. Rumor had it that his sword was made of ordinary iron and was full of cracks. However, it had never been broken. Those who could leave cracks on his sword were all famous. When the self-cultivator world talked about Gu Etienne, they all thought he was Broken Sword's disciple. However, this matter couldn't be verified because Gu Etienne and Broken Sword were both mysterious. As for the rumored Broken Sword, no one knew his true strength because he had disappeared from the self-cultivator world for many years. However, some guessed that his cultivation had already reached the tribulation passing stage. If Gu Etienne obtained Broken Sword's true inheritance, then he was worthy of attention. Gu Etienne. It's him. I should have thought of it earlier. Who else but him would carry a broken iron sword on his back? He only has the aura of a chi condensation stage cultivator. He tricked us all. Although Gu Etienne is very powerful, he's only ranked 45th in the extreme immortal ranking. Heavenly Spine Sword is ranked 23rd in the extreme immortal ranking. How could Gu Etienne dare to challenge Heavenly Spine Sword like this? Although Gu Etienne's name was very famous in the self-cultivator world, he was still weaker than the extreme immortal ranking. After all, the ones who were in the limelight were Jianing, Chun Feng's disciple, Xiao Ran, Chu Xiachi, and other geniuses. Heavenly Spine Sword's name alone was more famous than Gu Etienne's. Everyone looked at Gu Etienne with pity. In their opinion, Gu Etienne didn't recognize the Heavenly Spine Sword in front of him. That was why he said such arrogant words. Now, he would have to pay the price in blood. However, Gu Etienne only looked at Heavenly Spine Sword indifferently and said, "You're not worthy of me killing you." Arrogant. This was the only word in everyone's mind. Gu Etian actually said such words in front of the tribulation passing stage heavenly spine sword. I'm afraid Gu Etian won't be able to survive today. What a pity. Gu Etian isn't even 30 years old. If he was born a few years earlier, maybe he could really fight the heavenly spine sword. But now, how can he be the heavenly spine sword opponent? Many people secretly shook their heads and sighed. They felt sorry for Gu Etian's arrogant attitude. Daring to say such words in front of the heavenly spine sword meant that he would definitely die. Heavenly spine sword coldly looked at Gu Etian and said, I want to see what makes you so arrogant. A white light flashed in his hand, and a slender long sword appeared in the heavenly spine sword's hand. This sword was very strange. The body of the sword was round and smaller than a finger. It emitted a breathtaking white light. This was the heavenly spine sword. Everyone in the sword cleansing valley was named after their sword. This terrifying sword was the heavenly spine sword. It was rumored that the sword cleansing valley collected all the divine weapons and refined them for this genius. It was called the heavenly spine, known as the spine of the sky. It was one of the 5 famous divine swords of the sword cleansing valley, which showed how powerful it was. The moment the heavenly spine sword appeared, the entire inn was filled with a terrifying sword aura. That indestructible aura made people tremble in fear. Many self-cultivators who were too close had already started to shrink back in fear. There were also some who were afraid of being implicated and had already escaped from the inn, watching from the entrance. I'm not worthy of your sword, Heavenly Spine sword coldly asked. His whole body was like a sword aura. In many people's eyes, he had even merged with the heavenly spine sword in his hand. Such talent was truly awe-inspiring. Gu Etian still indifferently replied, You're not worthy. Heavenly Spine sword's eyes revealed a trace of sharpness. Then I'll kill you. Swish! Heavenly Spine sword had already stabbed out. The round sword body suddenly changed shape. The sword aura turned into a sharp blade, as if it was piercing through the void. In everyone's eyes, he had just attacked, but the sword aura had already arrived in front of Gu Etian's face. Fast. It was really too fast. Everyone was shocked by the speed of Heavenly Spine sword's attack. That sword was as insufferably arrogant as lightning. In the blink of an eye, it had reached an inconceivable realm. It was far from what they, who were at a lower realm, could understand. Heavenly Spine sword was a genius at the crossing calamity stage. His swordsmanship had already reached the acme of perfection. The genius of the sword cleansing valley is indeed terrifying. Gu Etian is doomed. But just when everyone thought that the conceited Gu Etian would be killed by this sword, Gu Etian indifferently picked up a chopstick from the table and faced Heavenly Spine sword. A chopstick. Gu Etian actually used a chopstick to face the enemy? Was this person really arrogant to this extent? The self-cultivators and then all looked at Gu Etian in astonishment. They felt that Gu Etian was really arrogant to the point of being unreasonable. Facing the number 1 genius of the sword cleansing valley, he actually only used a chopstick. How could a chopstick be compared to the Heavenly Spine sword, which was known as the spine of the sky? It was too disrespectful to the opponent. Gu Etian was really courting death. Chapter 1044. The chopstick looked ordinary and fragile, but in Gu Etian's hand, it formed a different scene. At some point, the chopstick burst out with a powerful sword chi, as if it contained a divine sword. The sword light shot out from the chopstick and collided with the swift tip of the Heavenly Spine sword. Ding! The powerful sword chi surged violently, but it didn't affect other places. It only violently collided with the Heavenly Spine sword and the chopstick. Then, with a sudden tremor, the Heavenly Spine sword's expression changed. Thump, thump, thump. He took 10 steps back before barely stopping. How is this possible? Gu Etian, who was ranked 45th, used a chopstick to repel the Heavenly Spine sword, who was ranked 23rd. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and looked in disbelief at Gu Etian, who was still sitting in the same place. Stormy waves had already set off in their hearts. Bang! The Heavenly Spine sword stepped on the ground and crushed the floor of the inn. Silence. The entire inn was silent. A battle between experts could be decided in the blink of an eye. No one would have thought that Gu Yiqian, who was looked down upon by everyone, would be able to repel the heavenly spine sword without even drawing his broadsword when facing the genius of the sword cleansing valley. The heavenly spine sword was already at the crossing calamity stage. Didn't this mean that Gu Yiqian was also at the crossing calamity stage? Then he was only ranked 45th. Didn't this mean that he just didn't make it to the ranking list? Everyone's expression changed when they looked at Gu Yiqian. What was the background of such a monster? How could he be so terrifying? He hid so deeply that even the genius of the sword cleansing valley was no match for him. The heavenly spine sword's expression had become very gloomy. He was originally a genius of the sword cleansing valley. After cultivating bitterly for so many years, he thought that his swordsmanship had reached the peak and was enough to challenge the legendary disciple of Sword Shadow, Qin Feng. But what made him angry was that he couldn't even defeat a person of unknown origin with a single sword strike. You have some skills. The heavenly spine sword gently turned the sword in his hand and said coldly, "But if you think you're stronger than me, then you're gravely mistaken. If you don't use the sword on your back, you're courting death." Heavenly spine sword raised his sword again and pointed it at Gu Yiqian. His aura rose again. He had only used his sword to test the waters. He hadn't used his full strength at all. Gu Yiqian looked at the heavenly spine sword with disdain. "Only those who truly know how to use the sword are worthy of my broadsword. Who do you think you are?" That figure appeared in Gu Yiqian's mind. Back in the Moyen mountain range, he had lost to that person. Now he had relied on his tenacious perseverance to reach the crossing calamity stage as a body cultivator. What he wanted to do the most was to find that person and have a fair fight with him. As for the heavenly spine sword, it was not in his eyes at all. Is there anyone in the world who knows more about the sword than our sword cleansing valley? Heavenly spine sword said disdainfully. Gu Yiqian looked at the heavenly spine sword with disdain. "Your swordsmanship is not worth mentioning in front of them." "Who are they?" Heavenly spine sword frowned. Gu Yiqian didn't answer. He didn't care to answer. He just stood up indifferently and walked towards the door of the inn as if the heavenly spine sword was just a joke in front of him. Everyone automatically made way for him, not daring to stop his footsteps. The heavenly spine sword flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was infuriated by Gu Yiqian's attitude. The sword in his hand attacked again. This time, his sword chi was like a landslide, making people feel small. All the cultivators in the inn had already flashed out of the windows, afraid that they would suffer an unexpected disaster if they were a step late. The heavenly spine sword's sword was domineering and sharp as it stabbed towards Gu Yiqian's back. Gu Yiqian suddenly turned around and grabbed the sword with his left hand. "Humph, you're courting death." The heavenly spine sword sneered in his heart when he saw that Gu Yiqian intended to meet his sword with his bare hands. Was his sword so easy to catch? The sword chi in his hand flourished again. He wanted Gu Yiqian to pay the price. Clang! The sound of metal colliding was heard. What the heavenly spine sword didn't expect was that Gu Yiqian actually grabbed the heavenly spine sword with his hand. His body was like an indestructible divine weapon. A powerful force came from the tip of the heavenly spine sword and blasted back. Thump, thump, thump. The heavenly spine sword's expression changed again, and he took 10 steps back for the second time. He didn't expect Gu Yiqian to be so powerful. Gu Yiqian is indeed hiding his strength. It was not in vain for us to come here personally. At this moment, loud laughter came from outside the inn. Soon after, an old man with a head full of white hair slowly walked in from the entrance of the inn. His appearance caused the onlookers on the street and in the inn to cry out in surprise once again. "It's Elder Tian Hoyong of Stargate. I didn't expect him to appear here." The mountain gate of Stargate was destroyed. Tian Xingzhou, who was in the sixth sky of the tribulation passing stage, died. The Stargate suffered a great loss. As an expert in the fifth sky of the tribulation passing stage, Tian Hoyong had become the supreme elder of Stargate. Many people had seen Tian Hoyang lead the self-cultivators to kill Yumon in Wuqiu City. Tian Hoyang left a deep impression on them. They didn't expect such an unfathomable person to appear in this place today. Tian Hoyang walked in from the entrance and blocked Gu Etien's path. He looked at Gu Etien indifferently and said, "You are very powerful. The news said that you are a very special person who walks the path of sword cultivation and body cultivation. You were born unable to cultivate, but your understanding of sword cultivation is extremely profound. Your body has been refined into a divine weapon. It seems that it is true." Gu Etian stood indifferently and said, "Do you two want to fight together? I alone am enough to deal with you." The heavenly spine sword rebuked angrily. However, Tian Hoyang stretched out his hand and stopped the heavenly spine sword. "Heavenly spine sword, I will take over from here." The heavenly spine sword's face was livid as he said, "Master asked me to take charge of this matter. You don't even have the qualifications to make him draw his sword," Tian Hoyang said without any trace of politeness. The heavenly spine sword clenched his fist. He was extremely angry. As a #1 genius of Sword Cleansing Valley, when had he ever been humiliated like this? However, he couldn't refute Tian Hoyang's words because from beginning to end, Gu Etian hadn't drawn his sword. The first time, Gu Etian had used chopsticks to beat him back. The second time, Gu Etian had beaten him back with his bare hands. This had greatly damaged his self-confidence. He really didn't have the qualifications to make Gu Etian draw his sword. "Why are you looking for me?" Gu Etian asked simply. "You are very lucky. Someone has taken a fancy to you. Come with us," Tian Hoyang said conceitedly. The heavenly spine sword replied without hesitation, "Not interested." Tian Hoyang lazily glanced at the 4 seas his home in. The entire inn had become empty because of the fight between the heavenly spine sword and Gu Etian. No one dared to linger for fear of being affected by the sword chi. However, both of them were experts at the tribulation stage and had excellent control over their sword chi. Other than the floor being cracked by the heavenly spine sword, the rest of the inn was intact. Only those who had reached a high level could do this. The heavenly spine sword had damaged the floor, but Gu Etian hadn't even broken a chopstick. It was clear who had won and who had lost. Tian Hoyang glanced at the self-cultivators who were peeking outside. He raised his hand and closed the door of the inn. Then he walked to a table and sat down. Tian Hoyang rolled up his sleeve, and an empty wine cup on the counter flew into his hand. He slowly poured himself a cup of wine and asked, "Are you not interested in the Sanchong Palace?" The heavenly spine sword snorted, "I don't trust the Sanchong Palace. The Sanchong Palace is everywhere. It's unwise for you not to trust it," Tian Hoyang said with a smile. "I only know that those who set up true gods aren't good people." The heavenly spine sword said indifferently. Tian Hoyang looked at the heavenly spine sword in surprise. "So you believe in Jian, in Chunfeng?" The heavenly spine sword didn't answer and continued to walk toward the door. The heavenly spine sword clenched his sword, his eyes still fixed on the heavenly spine sword. Tian Hoyang asked unhurriedly, "Then do you believe in Boyang Daoren?" The heavenly spine sword suddenly stopped in his tracks. "It seems that one-armed old man really is your master. I really didn't expect that a piece of trash who only reached the Jindan period could teach such a talented person like you. Master said that you were a sword cultivator genius that had been buried. So that's how it is." Tian Hoyang sighed. The heavenly spine sword suddenly turned around. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "What did you do to my master?" A fierce aura burst forth from the heavenly spine sword. He was like a slumbering sword that was gradually awakening. Resuscitation. Tian Hoyang tapped his fingers on the table. Suddenly, 2 figures flashed through the inn. Then a third tribulation stage aura filled the entire inn. However, this aura was mixed with a weak Jindan period aura. The pale-faced Boyang Daoren appeared in the inn. He was dressed in plain clothes, and his left arm was missing. Next to him stood a middle-aged man who was at the second heaven of tribulation stage. This person was called Tian Yuan Wan. He was another tribulation stage elder of the Star Gate. "Master," The rims of the heavenly spine sword Sek's eyes turned red. No matter how indifferent he was overwhelmed with emotions the moment he saw Boyong Daoren. Boyong Daoren took the poor heavenly spine sword sect away from the academy in the past. He gave heavenly spine sword sect a chance to be a cultivator and made heavenly spine sword sect what he was today. Even though heavenly spine sword sect's cultivation had far surpassed Boyong Daoren's, he would always respect Boyong Daoren the most in his heart. Ichien, get out of here. Don't worry about me. I'm old. At most, I'll just die. You have to take good care of yourself. Boyong Daoren felt gratified and worried when he saw the strong aura on the heavenly spine sword sect's body. He was happy that his disciple was successful. However, he was also very sad that his weak master had become his disciple's burden. He was just a cultivator from the Jindan period. He concealed his identity in the Mayun Mountains and didn't want to get involved in the affairs of the cultivation world. However, 3 days ago, a godlike person found him and took him away without any explanation. He knew that his disciple might have caused trouble outside. Master, don't worry. No one can hurt you. Heavenly Spine Sword Sect's voice had become extremely cold. It was like a piece of ice that could freeze people's souls. Tian Hoyang laughed and said, I didn't expect that you would recognize a good-for-nothing from the Jindan period as your master. He was a strong man and wanted to end his own life. He didn't want to be a burden to you. However, I didn't agree to his death, so he can't die. Heavenly Spine Sword Sect clenched his fists and looked at Tian Hoyang. What do you want? His heart was already filled with killing intent. He thought that no one would disturb his master when he concealed his identity in the Mayun Mountains. Moreover, he had never mentioned his origin to anyone when he was wandering in the cultivation world. However, he never expected that someone would find Boyong Daoren. Heavenly Spine Sword Sect still didn't know why the other party was looking for him. Tian Hoyang smiled faintly. It's your honor that the master has taken a fancy to your aptitude. We want you to deal with someone for us. What if I don't agree? Chapter 1045. It was a broadsword riddled with scars and cracks. It looked like it could break into pieces at any time. But when Gu Yiqian held the sword, an indescribable aura came from the sword. It was as if the ordinary sword contained monstrous killing intent and instantly merged with Gu Yiqian. The heavenly spine sword and Tian Hoyang became cautious. They didn't underestimate the sword. Tian Yuanwan suddenly grabbed Boyong Daoren's throat. At the same time, he grabbed Boyong Daoren's other hand and said coldly, If you don't agree, your trash master doesn't need to keep his right arm anymore. Boyong Daoren's face showed a painful expression. Tian Yuanwan was a master at the crossing calamity stage. How could he, a little Jindan period cultivator, resist? But Boyong Daoren clenched his teeth and didn't let himself cry out. He said with a trembling voice, Yiqian go. Don't compromise with them. Gu Yiqian's sword was already emitting a sharp sword aura. The anger in his heart had already spread to his sword. The whole sword was trembling with anger. Tian Hoyang laughed. You are very strong, but no matter how strong you are, you can't kill us before we cut off your master's arm and crush his throat. They had 3 people at the crossing calamity stage on their side, and Gu Yiqian was alone. If they wanted to kill Boyong Daoren, Gu Yiqian couldn't stop them. But Gu Yiqian just looked at Tian Yuanwan coldly. The 2 cracks on the broadsword in his hand suddenly lit up with a snow-white light. It was so dazzling that it illuminated everyone's eyes and made them blur. Chi! 2 sword auras suddenly appeared on Tian Yuanwan's palms. It was so fast that even Tian Yuanwan couldn't react. Tian Yuanwan's spiritual energy didn't even reach Taoist Bo Yang's body. Nor did he injure a single hair on Taoist Bo Yang's body before he was struck by the sword Qi. Tian Yuanwan screamed miserably. His hands had been severed from the wrist by Gu Yiqian's sword energy. Tian Hoyang's arrogant expression suddenly froze. He knew that Gu Yiqian was very strong, but he didn't expect Gu Yiqian to be this strong. Tian Yuanwan, who was at the second stage of tribulation, didn't even have time to attack Boyong Daoren before he paid a painful price. Even Tian Hoyang and Tian Jijian, who were in the 5th sky of tribulation stage, couldn't see the sword clearly Gu Etien's figure flashed as he slashed his sword towards Tian Yuan Wan's throat. But this time, Tian Hoyong and Tian Ji Jian reacted. They attacked at the same time, and a powerful aura swept out, blocking Gu Etien's sword. Thump! Thump! Tian Hoyong and the Heavenly Spine sword both retreated 3 steps before coming to a stop. However, Boyang Daoren was already behind Gu Etian. From the moment he attacked to the moment he saved Tian Yuan Wan, it didn't even take half a breath's time. Gu Etian had already saved his master. The cracks on the broadsword lit up again. It was as if each crack contained a terrifying sword energy that made people tremble in fear. You all deserve to die. Gu Etien's broadsword was filled with a strong killing intent as it burst forth again. He wanted to attack and kill these 3 people. Swish! The awe-inspiring sword energy swept out with an indomitable aura. Tian Hoyong retreated with Tian Yuanwan. They barely managed to avoid the terrifying sword chi. Their figures were in an extremely sorry state. Gu Etien's strength was far beyond their imagination. They had no way to block this sword chi. Boom! The entire inn was completely destroyed by Gu Etien's sword energy. But at this moment, Boyang Daoren fell to the ground. His face was filled with a strange white light. It was as if there were white worms swimming under his skin, as if they wanted to break free from his skin. Boyang Daoren curled up in pain. Gu Etien's expression suddenly changed. Do you think it's so easy to save this trash from our hands? He's been hit by the Lord's soul technique. With a thought, he'll explode and die. His soul will be enslaved by us forever. Other than the Lord, no one can remove it. Do you really think you can fight against 3 palaces? Tian Hoyong sneered. Gu Etien tightly held onto Boyang Daoren. He angrily stared at Tian Hoyong. As someone who couldn't cultivate spiritual power, other than his strong body and talent in the way of the sword, he couldn't do anything about this soul technique. Etienne, Master's life is worthless. If they want it, give it to them. If you can kill them, do it now. If you can't, then leave quickly. If you compromise, you'll have to submit to them in the future. I don't want you to become like this. Boyang Daoren was in great pain. These words were squeezed out from between his teeth. He reached out his trembling hand, wanting to let his disciple go. In front of a tribulation-passing expert, he didn't even have the chance to kill himself during the Jindan period. He wasn't afraid of death. He was only afraid that his disciple would do something against morality. However, Gu Etian slowly lowered his sword. He had once destroyed those ungrateful people from the Qiantian school for his master. How could he abandon his master's life now? Who do you want me to deal with? Gu Etian asked coldly. Mu Yu and Tian Ran were heading towards the 50-mile garden in the south. They planned to go there and bring all the people from the Falling Dust sect to the Erase sect. Although the small courtyard in the 50-mile garden in the south had a powerful array formation set up by his master and Siebulo, which was enough to resist the people from 3 palaces, Mu Yu felt that there was too little space for him to move around. Now that he had his own sect, he should protect the people close to him. Apart from that, he had other things to do. Tian Ran sat in the void and carefully looked at the supreme immortal ranking list in her hand. She asked, Mu Yu, are we going to find these people one by one? Mu Yu shook his head. We're only going to find those who are necessary. Village Chief Olbu told him that there was too much demand for the supreme immortal steel in the cultivation world. If the 3 palaces couldn't stop the opening of the supreme immortal ranking, then they would definitely make an issue out of it. Apart from most of the people in the top 20, they would think of a way to control all the people with the most potential on the Supreme Immortal ranking in order to ensure that the 9 Supreme Immortals would be safe. Village Chief Old Bu had been studying the changes in the Supreme Immortal ranking list for a while. He'd listed some of the people with extraordinary potential on the list. Most of these people hadn't made it to the Supreme Immortal ranking, but Village Chief Old Bu felt that it was very likely that they were hiding their strength. There were 6 people in total. Shimin Wuji, from the evil faction, ranked 29th. Wan Wan, from the evil faction, ranked 32nd. Shang Guanlin, a wandering cultivator, ranked 41st. Gu Yiqian, a wandering cultivator, ranked 45th. Murong Yun, a wandering cultivator, ranked 51st. UMO, a wandering cultivator, ranked 52nd. Village Chief Old Bu combined their various performances and rumors in the cultivation world with his analysis of their potential to determine that their true strength wasn't limited to their current rankings. The 50th place on the Supreme Immortal ranking list was a dividing line because the top 50 were all experts above the spirit severing stage. However, according to the information Village Chief Olbu gathered, it was impossible that UMO and Murong Yun hadn't reached the spirit-severing stage yet. Village Chief Olbu told Muyu that according to the current trend, the opening of the Supreme Immortal Steel was already a foregone conclusion. Since the three palaces couldn't stop this from happening, they would think of a way to control the people with the highest potential to become the 9 Supreme Immortals. In the Supreme Immortal Steel, the three palaces couldn't interfere. Although the three palaces controlled the top 9 on the Supreme Immortal ranking, they still didn't dare to be careless. In other words, the three palaces would use all kinds of methods to coerce the young self-cultivators with huge potential to unite and fight against Mu Yu and the other 3 in the Supreme Immortal Steel. The cultivation world wasn't as simple as it seemed. Other than the 8 sects, there were also sects like the Sword-Washing Valley and a few other sects that had similar strength to the 8 sections. They would definitely be under the control of the 3 palaces. As for the wandering cultivators, or the young geniuses that even the 3 palaces couldn't find out about, these people were the same as Mu Yu and the other 3. They were all unstable factors. Therefore, the 3 palaces would think of ways to control these wandering cultivators. Village Chief Old Bu told Mu Yu to find these people before the 3 palaces because no one could be sure if they were really wandering cultivators or not. Perhaps their background was also shocking and they just kept a low profile, just in case it was still necessary to be on guard. Of course, Village Chief Old Bu also mentioned Shaoran and Chu Xiachi, who had somehow made it into the top 20 of the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. Muyu had seen Chu Xiachi twice, but he was protected by Daoist Chu Buku, who was a great ascension cultivator, so there was no need for him to waste his time. Muyu himself had never studied the Supreme Immortal ranking because he didn't care about it at all. It didn't matter who was ranked higher or lower. But now, he had to pay attention to this point. The 3 palaces was a colossus. It was clearly unwise for Mu Yu and the others to fight alone. Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan, these 2 evil sects, Golden Boy and Jade Girl, I know they have some skills, but I really can't figure out how the old faker deduced that the other 4 people are also hiding their strength. Little Shuai muttered. Mu Yu said, Grandpa Village Chief's eyes can't be wrong. Let's just trust him. He didn't like to cooperate with others. But rather than these people teaming up to create trouble for him in the Supreme Immortal Monument, he decided to deal with them one by one first. Do we have to pay attention to that idiot Gu Yiqian? Little Shuai curled his lips. Muyu nodded. Gu Yiqian is a worthy opponent. I've always thought that he's very strong. Body cultivators with perseverance are the most worthy opponents. When they were in the Mayun mountain range, both of them were at the nascent soul stage. Muyu and Gu Yiqian fought fair and square. In the end, Muyu emerged victorious. However, Muyu had never thought that Gu Yiqian was weaker than him. Everyone had their own fortuitous encounters. After so many years, Gu Yiqian's cultivation must have undergone a qualitative leap. In the past, his master had told Muyu that the path of body cultivators was extremely bumpy. Those who didn't have great perseverance couldn't cultivate. However, if they were able to cultivate successfully, they would all become powerful existences. Thus, Muyu had never underestimated Gu Yiqian. Muyu, I feel that you also have great perseverance. Your body is very strong. You can consider body cultivators. Tian Ran rubbed Muyu's sturdy arm. He doesn't need it. This guy's skin is almost 1% of mine. Little Shuai snorted. Muyu rudely rubbed Little Shuai's head. How am I thick-skinned? I get shy easily. Little Shuai's face was full of disdain. Muyu didn't comment. The black and white spirit energy in his body was very strange. Every time he was injured, the black spirit energy would devour the injured muscles, and the white spirit energy would repair them. The devouring and repairing process would make his body stronger. Thus, there was no doubt that his body was very strong. When he had first obtained the mutated black and white spiritual power, he had almost lost his life. He had also paid a great price to obtain this ability. Not to mention, Deadwood's father had even used the blood protection to save him. Such a powerful ability was not something that could be obtained easily. Chapter 1046. The courtyard where the Luochen sect resided was on 6 Mile Street. Ever since the incident in Clearwater City, Muyu had secretly returned to take a look at them and met Xiangnan. The two of them left together and never saw those people from the Luochen mountain again. He didn't know how those people were doing now. Luo Shang had walked on his own path and didn't want to see Lan Ling anymore. Lan Ling would definitely miss Luo Shang again. Elder Sun had to take care of Kong Kong and Miao Miao, the two naughty fellows. Qing Mei and Qing Song Taoist were also here. What Muyu missed the most now was his master and Enshu. Their whereabouts were still unknown. Muyu used the teleportation array and arrived at 6 Mile Street with ease. He turned the corner and walked toward the courtyard in the alley. This courtyard wasn't very big, but it wasn't small either. It was more than enough to house a dozen people. There was a powerful restriction set up by his master in the courtyard. Only the people from the Luochen mountain knew how to enter the courtyard. Muyu naturally knew this because their auras were sealed in the array. This array was the same as the one in the Luochen mountain. It had spirituality and could recognize their own people. Creak! The door to the courtyard opened, and Muyu and Tian Ran walked in. Swoosh! However, at this moment, a sword light quickly flew toward Muyu. It was as fast as the wind and flashed with a cold light. The strength of the sword light was also at the out-of-body stage. Clang! Muyu stretched out his hand and easily caught the sword light. He then said, "It's me, Muyu." "Lord Muyu?" Qing Song Taoist's surprised voice sounded from the courtyard. The person who attacked just now was Qing Mei's father, Qing Song Taoist. He was already at the out-of-body stage. Senior Pine Tree. Muyu nodded in greeting. The Qing Song Taoist was wearing a simple green robe. When he saw Muyu, he was overjoyed. He quickly withdrew his sword and said, "Lord Muyu, please forgive me. I didn't know you were back. I thought someone had broken in. Linger told me to be on guard no matter who came in. Senior Pine Tree is too polite. You did the right thing." Muyu looked around. It was still a familiar layout, but now things had changed. This humble one doesn't dare to accept the title of senior. This humble one doesn't dare to accept it. The Qing Song Taoist said with some trepidation. Back then, the Qing Song Taoist had been the local tyrant of the Moyun mountain range. He could do whatever he wanted in the Moyun mountain range. It was only later that he realized how deep the Falling Dust sect had been hiding. Not to mention that Muyu had already become a famous expert in the cultivation world. Although he had been living here for a long time, he had also heard rumors about the cultivation world and knew the current situation in the cultivation world. He also knew who Feng Haochen was. The Qing Song Taoist was only at the out-of-body stage, so he felt some reverence in his heart. Muyu smiled and said, "Senior Pine Tree, your senior brother's father-in-law. You could just call me Muyu." The Qing Song Taoist felt lucky that his daughter and Chengyan could meet. He said, "Okay, what happened?" "Father." Qing Mei hurriedly ran out from the backyard. She saw Muyu and let out a sigh of relief. "Muyu, it's you. I thought Lingo was back." Old Sun also hurriedly ran out from the backyard. He was very excited when he saw Muyu. "Muyu, it's really you." Old Sun nodded at Tian Ran. He knew Tian Ran. After all, Tian Ran had stayed at the Falling Dust Mountain for a year and was familiar with everyone. "Is everyone okay? Where are the others?" Muyu walked over and patted Old Sun's shoulder. At this point, the Qing Song Taoist, Qing Mei, and the others suddenly went silent. The atmosphere became a bit tense. Old Sun sighed and said, "Muyu, there's only the three of us here." Muyu was startled and felt a bit uneasy. He immediately asked, "What about Ling and Kong Kong Miao Miao?" Old Sun said guiltily, "It's all my fault. I didn't look after Kong Kong and Miao Miao. They left the courtyard 5 days ago and never came back. Ling went out to look for them, but there's no news. Muyu's heart sank. Lan Ling, and Kong Kong Meow Meow were both missing. Muyu frowned and said, "Tell me what happened in detail." Old Sun said, "It's like this. Kong Kong and Meow Meow often sneak out to play. Because they are at the spirit severing stage, we're not worried about them. But 5 days ago, it didn't come back at night. Ling went out to look for them, but there was no news. Before Ling left, she said that the cultivation world might be bad for us. She told us not to leave the courtyard no matter what. Our cultivation is too low and we can't do anything. It's all my fault. I'm useless." Old Sun, forget it. You can't stop them if they want to play. After so many years, Muyu was surprised that Kong Kong and Meow Meow had reached the spirit-severing stage. But now was not the time to be surprised. He had to figure out where Kong Kong and Meow Meow went. These two little fellows were troublesome fellows. They were naughty and liked to run around. Now that their cultivation had unexpectedly reached the spirit-severing stage, Elder Sun couldn't keep an eye on them. "Where do they usually go to play?" Xiao Shuai asked curiously. "They like to wander around every street in the Woolly Garden, but they won't leave the Woolly Garden. They usually come back when it's dark, but they didn't come back that day. So we're very worried." Old Sun sighed. Muyu pondered for a moment and said, "Okay, Old Sun, Senior Pine Tree, wait here. No matter what, don't leave the courtyard. It's really chaotic outside. I'll go out and look for them. I'll come back later." He immediately left with Tian Ran and walked outside. The others watched Muyu leave. They couldn't help it all. "Muyu, where are we going?" Tian Ran asked anxiously. Tian Ran had been with Kong Kong Meow Meow for a year. She knew the temperament of these two little guys. They would stir up a hornet's nest, explode a latrine pit, and do all kinds of pranks. However, they were still on the same side. 38 Mile Street. Muyu flashed and quickly went to the 38 Mile Street in the bustling street. In the Woolly Garden in the south, if you wanted to find someone, it was best to ask the evil faction for help. Because the evil faction was in this place, it was more than enough for them to find someone. Tian Ran followed closely behind Muyu. The two of them were very fast. This time, they didn't need to rely on the teleportation formation. In just a moment, they arrived at the 38 Mile Street. 38 Mile Street was still deserted. A few pedestrians looked hurried and sneaky. It was much more strange than the other streets. Muyu stepped into the Luing Garden. The evil faction's place was never guarded, and no one would come here to behave atrociously. The aura of the Tribulation Realm had already spread out and covered the entire Luing Garden. In Muyu's opinion, this was the best way to attract people from the evil faction. But soon his expression changed. The smell of blood. Something happened. Muyu immediately jumped into the Luing Garden. He had been here before. He walked across the stone bridge and passed through the courtyard. He suddenly found a curly-bearded man lying in a pool of blood. He was no longer breathing. He carefully looked around and came to the side of the corpse. Muyu vaguely recognized this person. When he first came here, this curly-bearded man was also a very powerful person. The one lying on the stone and basking in the sun was him. What happened? Did someone attack the evil faction's place? Tian Ran asked cautiously. Muyu's hand brushed across the curly-bearded man's forehead. A pale white light came out from the curly-bearded man's forehead. His expression sank, its soul force. What? People from the third palace? Tian Ran immediately stood up and looked around. The immortal Dew sword had already appeared in her hand, but the surroundings were quiet. Other than the smell of blood, there was no other aura. He has been dead for a while. Muyu put down the curly-bearded man's corpse and continued to walk inside. Luing Yuan was already in a mess. The rocks and fake mountains were all over the place, blood-stained everywhere. From time to time, one could see some evil sect people lying in the rubble, their bodies badly mutilated, surrounded by a seemingly indiscernible soul power. He quickly circled around the Luin court and discovered that there were 32 corpses in the Luin court. Each of the corpses still had remnant soul power. Damn it, the people from the third palace really killed the evil faction people. Muyu clenched his fists. Although the evil faction people did things as they pleased and did not play according to common sense, They were at least more upright than the people from the third palace. He did not expect that the third palace would actually kill the evil faction people. The people from the third palace did not even let the evil faction people go. Why? Muyu checked the corpses. They had been dead for at least 5 days. Muyu's heart sank even more. Kong Kong and Meow Meow also went missing 5 days ago. Did they really fall into the hands of the third palace? There are no corpses of Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan. They are not here. Tian Ran said, the Golden Boy and Jade Girl of the evil faction should be the two most powerful people in the evil faction. If they were not here, then would they also fall into the hands of the third palace? Muyu was a little worried. He should not have let Shimin Wuji leave at that time. Although Shimin Wuji was powerful, he was not a great Ascension Stage opponent. If the palace envoy or other people made a move, Shimin Wuji would not be able to defeat them. The evil faction people did not set up an array here. It is really strange. Isn't Siebulo an array master? Why didn't he set up an array to protect the Luin Garden? Xiao Shui knocked on the ground. After searching for a while, he did not find any trace of an array. Not to mention an array, there was not even a decent door here. Muyu said in a deep voice, with the evil faction people's style of doing as they please, they will not stop people from barging in. Anyone can come and go as they please. It depends on whether the self-cultivator has the guts to come. The first time he came to the Luin Garden, he was also unimpeded. The evil faction people ignored him and let him come in and wander around. Their territory was not private. Ordinary self-cultivators also did not have the guts to provoke the evil faction people. He did not expect that the evil faction people's characteristic of not setting up defenses led to the attack of the Third Palace people and heavy casualties. Chapter 10:47. Muyu jumped over, stepped on the water surface, and flipped that person over. This was a young man with a very pale complexion, dressed like a scholar, and appeared to be somewhat weak. Muyu recognized him with a single glance. He was the top scholar. When Muyu and Kumu came here for the first time, he had fought with Zhuang Yuanlang. Zhuang Yuanlang's magic treasure was a book, and the book could transform into millions of pieces of paper, called Page Shadow. But at this time, the top scholar's body was also devoid of vitality. His whole body was somewhat swollen from being soaked in water. His eyes were tightly closed, his lips were dark, his skin was pale, and there were also shocking scars on his body. He brought the top scholar ashore and confusedly asked, "Little Handsome, are you sure he is still alive?" If the top scholar was still alive, his body should have vitality, but Muyu didn't feel any fluctuation of vitality. Little Handsome stretched out his little finger and tapped the top scholar's body. His body issued a dong 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 sound, just like the beating of a drum. It was somewhat strange. That's right. He sealed his vitality and transformed it into a kind of strange, evil power. This is a very strange martial technique. He is faking his death. Little Handsome said with certainty. Evil Bulow's martial techniques were all very strange. Muyu had already seen this point many times. Then how do we wake him up? Muyu immediately asked. He wanted to figure out what had happened, and it would be best if he knew the whereabouts of Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan. Little Handsome blinked his eyes and thought for a while, then said, his martial technique will cause him to fake his death for about 7 days, and his vitality will completely wither. I don't remember where I have seen this before, but I know how to wake him up quickly. Little Handsome stretched out his thin, as cicada's wing-sharp claws, and gently penetrated the top scholar's chest. The top scholar's body was already swollen, but after Little Handsome's sharp claws penetrated the top scholar's heart, the top scholar suddenly opened his eyes, and immediately after, a mouthful of black gas came out of his mouth, and his swollen body gradually disappeared, returning to normal. You guys, after the top scholar woke up, he was still very nervous, but after seeing clearly that it was Muyu, he exclaimed in surprise, "So it was you." His chest was constantly moving up and down, and his entire person looked somewhat sickly, and his breathing was also quite unstable. What happened? Did the people of the Third Palace kill all of you? Muyu took out a pill and fed it to the scholar. The scholar let out a sigh of relief, then revealed a look of resentment. That's right, The people from the Sanchong Palace and Star Gate attacked our Luing Garden. If I hadn't learned Master's life-stopping technique, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape death." He silently turned his head to look around and saw the corpses of the other evil faction members. No matter how unrestrained these evil faction members were, after seeing their own people in trouble, they would not remain indifferent. He didn't expect the threefold palace to attack them at this time. After a moment of silence, Muyu asked, "Have you seen Kong Kong, Miao Miao, and Lan Ling, from our Falling Dust sect?" Zhuang Yuanlang said, "Although Kong Kong and Miao Miao often come here to play, before the people from the Sanchong Palace came that day, someone took them away." "Someone took them away? Is it Lan Ling?" Muyu quickly asked. Zhuang Yuanlang shook his head. "It's not Lan Ling. It's a middle-aged man. I don't know. Kong Kong and Miao Miao seem to know him, so they left with him." "Someone Kong Kong and Miao Miao know?" Muyu's heart shook. Could it be Shu? Ever since Master's accident, and Shu's whereabouts have been unknown, but Shu's cultivation was only at the Jindan period. Where would he take Kong Kong and Miao Miao to? Muyu couldn't be sure because Kong Kong and Miao Miao had stayed in the 50-mile garden for so long. They must know many people. Muyu wasn't sure if the middle-aged man mentioned by the scholar was Shu. But if someone took Kong Kong and Miao Miao, where did Lan Linger go? Was she also taken away? If it's Shu, then Shu should know how to avoid the threefold palace, so we don't have to worry about Kong Kong and Miao Miao. Xiao Shuai said. Muyu nodded. Currently, he didn't have any clues, so he could only think like this. And Shu had followed Master for many years, so he must know a lot of secrets. Maybe he knew how to avoid the investigation of the threefold palace. Now that the evil sect had also suffered a serious attack, the cultivation world seemed to have become even more unsafe, so they could only take one step at a time. Muyu thought for a moment and asked again, "Then what about Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan?" Yuanlang Zhuang had a worried expression on his face and said, "The people from the Sanchong Palace are here for the two of them. It's just that the two of them aren't here most of the time, but I remember when Wan Wan left last time, she said she wanted to go to Chishui City." Chishui City? Where's that? Muyu had never heard of this city. Chishui City, it is a city that appears and disappears mysteriously. It is said that very few people in the cultivation world can find this city, because it is a forbidden area for cultivators. Chishui City is located on the banks of the Chishui River, and even the Chishui River is not fixed. Zhuang Yuanlang said. Chishui River is not fixed? What does that mean? Little Shuai asked. Zhuang Yuanlang shook his head. I also haven't seen it before. That river appears and disappears mysteriously. I heard Wan Wan say that when you don't want to find it, you might find this river, but if you want to find it, you won't be able to find it. There is actually such a place. Muyu felt a bit surprised. It seemed that there were still many places in the threefold continent that he didn't fully understand. At least, he had never heard of Chishui City before. Tianran, have you heard of Chishui City? Muyu asked. Tianran was a member of the Red Dust sect. Even though the Red Dust sect no longer existed, it was still one of the 8 sects with an important position in the cultivation world. She should know about this place on the threefold continent. Tianran slightly frowned and pondered for a bit before saying, I heard Mother talk about Chishui City. Rumor has it that it is a place where mortals live. When cultivators set foot there, their cultivation would be crippled by powerful existences, and they would become mortals, unable to leave. Mother didn't say exactly where it is, because it's a legendary city that can move. It's erratic, and everyone only heard rumors, but no one knows if it really exists. Muyu was even more curious about Chishui City. A moving city and river, what kind of place was that? He couldn't figure out, so he could only put aside for now. Now that the evil faction's Luin Core had been destroyed like this, he couldn't do anything about it. The threefold palace's actions were too vicious. Right now, he could only hope that others would know how to protect themselves. Muyu helped Zhuang Yuanlang heal his injuries until Zhuang Yuanlang could move on his own. He then left Luin Court. Zhuang Yuanlang said that he would look for Dubi Ying. Dubi Ying ran gambling houses all over the cultivation world. This time, He was lucky enough to escape this disaster. Mu Yu and Tian Ran returned to the small courtyard at Luli Street. Elder Sun and the rest looked a little gloomy. Evidently, Mu didn't find Kong Kong Meow Meow and Lan Ling Er. Elder Sun's face was filled with self-blame. Elder Sun, don't worry. No matter what, it's not safe for you guys to stay here. I will bring you guys to the Array sect, Mu Yu said. Qing Mei shook her head. I don't want to go. I want to wait for Qing Yan to come back. After the incident at Clearwater City, the four of them had different beliefs and chose to go their separate ways. Luo Shang came back once and left without saying goodbye. Qing Yan also left later and never came back. Mu Yu had an indescribable feeling in his heart. He then sighed. Senior Qing Yan will be fine. Don't worry. Qing Song Taoist naturally knew his daughter's thoughts. During the time that Qing Yan left, Qing Mei became silent. She had been waiting for Qing Yan to come back. As a father, Qing Song Taoist also loved her dearly. He said, Qing Mei, we are too weak. If we are captured by the Sanchong Palace, we will only be a burden to them. Let's listen to Mu Yu. If Chun Yin comes back, he will know where to find Mu Yu. Qing Mei clenched her teeth. The cultivation world had become chaotic, and the person she missed was wanted by the people of the cultivation world. She was afraid that one day, she would suddenly hear that something happened to Qing Yan. She couldn't bear all of this. However, her father was right. It wasn't safe to stay here. She might even become a burden. She could only agree. Then I will leave a letter for him to tell him where we are going. Mu Yu didn't object. The small courtyard's formation was very safe. After all, it was personally set up by his master. It wouldn't be easy for the people of the Sanchong Palace to enter. Leaving a letter wouldn't expose anything. Mu Yu brought Elder Sun and the rest away from the southern 50-mile garden and rushed to the Array faction overnight. He entrusted Master Lu to arrange a place for them to stay. Mu Yu himself went to find Zhuge Xiaosheng without stopping. Zhuge Xiaosheng and village chief Old Bu were in the Array hall. When Mu Yu came in, he asked, Sect Master, have you heard of Qishui City? Zhuge Xiaosheng should know a little about the cultivation world. After all, Zhuge Xiaosheng was once the leader of a sect. He designed formations for people everywhere in the cultivation world. He was much more competent than Mu Yu, the sect master who left everything to others. Zhuge Xiaosheng's expression changed, and he said in surprise, Qishui City? Mu Yu, why are you suddenly asking about this? Because Wanwan said she wanted to go to Qishui City. Mu Yu told Zhuge Xiaosheng about what happened in the southern 50-mile garden. Zhuge Xiaosheng nodded thoughtfully and said, Qishui City is a very mysterious city. I went there once, and it was unforgettable. Mu Yu was overjoyed. He didn't expect Zhuge Xiaosheng to have been to that place. Sect Master, tell me about it. Mu Yu had a vague feeling that Qishui City, a forbidden area for cultivators, should be hiding some unspeakable secrets. Since it could become a forbidden area for cultivators, did that mean that people from the Threefold Palace couldn't set foot in it? Currently, there were two places that the Threefold Palace couldn't set foot in. One was the Array faction, the other was the Pill Cauldron sect. Could Qishui City be the third? Zhuge Xiaosheng recalled for a moment and said, Dozens of years ago, I went there with the Ancestral Master. At that time, I was still very young. The Ancestral Master said that an old friend invited him, so the Ancestral Master asked me to follow and see the world. After entering Qishui City, I had a very strange feeling all over my body. It was as if all my cultivation was taken away in an instant. Only when I was beside the Ancestral Master was I not affected by this power. Now that I think about it, even if I go there now, I will be affected by this power. If I'm not wrong, that power should be the power of a domain. Mu Yu understood something. If Mu Yu guessed correctly, the Array Heavenly Tao's cultivation should be at the Great Ascension stage. After all, the Array Heavenly Tao was able to help set up the immortal confining prison, so his strength shouldn't be too bad. Chapter 1048. That's right, the owner of the Great Ascension stage is a Grand Ascension stage senior. The Patriarch told me that the defenses of the Great Ascension stage are no less than that of our Array sect's Array Hall, Zhuge Xiaosheng said. No less than that of the Array Hall? Doesn't that mean the Great Ascension Stage City is also a Dao tool? Muyu exclaimed. Dao tool? What's a Dao tool? Zhuge Xiaosheng asked in confusion. Sect leader, you don't know about Dao tools? Our Array Sect's Array Hall and the Pill Cauldron Sect's Ruins Opening Cauldron are both Dao tools. Little Shuai, do you still remember the inscriptions we deciphered in the Ruins Opening Cauldron? Tell us about them for the sect leader to hear, Muyu said to Little Shuai. In order to save the Pill Cauldron sect, they had to decipher 81 inscriptions in order to activate the Ruins Opening Cauldron to form an explanatory sentence. Little Shuai shook his head and said, Are you talking about those strange inscriptions? Let me think. At the beginning of chaos, all laws were born and died. Tao gave birth to one gave birth to two extremes gave birth to the 4 divisions, 4 divisions gave birth to the 8 trigrams, and the 8 trigrams gave birth to all things. The 2 energies of yin and yang originated from chaos, existed within Dao tools, and were bestowed upon one's heart. There's also a sentence. Dao follows nature. Dao tools of the 9 heavens rule the universe, and spirit tools of the 5 elements give birth to all things. Nameless is the beginning of heaven and earth. Nameless is the mother of all things. Little Shuai then muttered, I still don't understand these words. I only remember that the eternal existence of heaven ends when chaos closes, and the binding spirit of the shadow god is not within the 5 elements. That handsome, binding spirit should be referring to me. Muyu suddenly thought of something and slapped his own head. He instantly understood a lot. The 2 energies of yin and yang originated from chaos, existed within Dao tools, and were bestowed upon one's heart. The 2 energies of yin and yang refer to the yin and yang of chaos. Little Black and Little White leaped out from Muyu's body and played happily in the air. Muyu explained, At the time, we didn't see a Hei and a Bai, so we didn't know what that meant. But now that I think about it, the 9 heavens Dao artifacts dominate the universe, and the 5 elemental spiritual artifacts give birth to all things. That is to say, there are at least 9 Dao artifacts, and each Dao artifact should contain chaos and yin and yang. For example, the owner of the Cauldron of Apocalypse is Deadwood Daddy, and the owner of the Array Hall is Naomi. Since the 5 elemental spiritual artifacts give birth to all things, the 5 elemental spiritual artifacts must be referring to this. The sword of Mu Ling appeared in Muyu's hand. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible because the sword of Mu Ling was a very powerful item. Even Gomang himself was not very clear about its origin. From the looks of it, the water spirit in Qiao Shui's hand was also a 5 elemental spiritual artifact. As for whether Qingyan, Luo Shang, and Xiang Nan had obtained a 5 elemental spiritual artifact, Muyu didn't know. Muyu continued, Little Commander, you just mentioned that the heavenly eternity exists until chaos closes, and the shadow god's spirit binding is not within the 5 elemental spiritual artifact. The shadow god refers to my master, and the spirit binding is not within the 5 elemental spiritual artifact refers to you. So the heavenly eternity must be referring to the power of the heavenly eternity within the bodies of the 9 immortal beings. When the 9 immortal beings are not sufficient, heaven and earth will be destroyed, which means that chaos will close. Zhuge Xiaosheng didn't really understand what Muyu was saying, so he asked, What's the point of knowing this? The 9 heavens Dao artifacts, the Cauldron of Apocalypse, and the Array Hall can all withstand the invasion of the 3rd palace. If the 3rd palace can't star people in Qishui City, then Qishui City can too. And we still haven't found the other immortal being, Ran Hengshi. Muyu thought of a possibility. Could the owner of Qishui City be Ran Hengshi? Little Commander slapped his head and said with sudden realization, a domain ability that can suppress cultivation. If the owner of Qishui City is Ran Hengshi, then Ran Hengshi's domain ability is spiritless, no immortal. Muyu and Little Commander said in unison. Spiritless, no immortal? Zhuge Xiaosheng and Tian Ran didn't understand. They knew very little about the domain abilities of the Great Ascension stage. Muyu explained, when we left Chishui City, we went out to sea and went to the Sea Demon King's dynasty. Perfected Xian Jizi sealed the Sea Demon King and left behind a demon-suppressing pagoda with many powerful array techniques. Perfected Xian Jizi, Sect Master, you should know about him, right? Zhuge Shaoxing nodded. Perfected Xian Jizi was a very powerful array master in our array faction. It was recorded in our array faction's records that he was very talented and created many powerful array techniques. However, he didn't seem to be willing to be the sect master of the array faction. Instead, he focused on researching array techniques. Later on, he mysteriously disappeared. He mysteriously disappeared because he went to the Demon Island to suppress the Sea Demon King. He was the true owner of the Third Palace more than 5,000 years ago. We said, although the people of the Third Palace wanted to keep it secret, the Third Palace was no longer what it used to be. It was controlled by the mutated races, and Zhuge Shaoxing could be trusted. Therefore, Muyu didn't hide anything. What? The owner of the Third Palace? Zhuge Shaoxing was shocked. Muyu explained Helion Kong's matter in detail. After hearing Muyu's words, Zhuge Shaoxing was extremely shocked and didn't recover for a long time. There was actually a third palace master hidden among our array faction's ancestors? Heavens! I didn't know at all. Zhuge Shaoxing muttered. This news was truly shocking to Zhuge Shaoxing. He originally thought from the ancient records of his ancestors that Taoist Master Xian Jizi was just an elder who didn't care about worldly affairs. He didn't expect Taoist Master Xian Jizi's identity to be so terrifying. However, as the owner of the Third Palace, Taoist Master Xian Jizi abided by the principle of confidentiality. He would only stand out when the cultivation world was in danger. At other times, he wouldn't reveal his identity. Therefore, no one in the array faction knew about this. Muyu continued, when we entered Taoist Master Xian Jizi's Demon Sealing Pagoda, one of the floors of the Demon Sealing Pagoda was restricted by a type of domain ability. That domain ability was called Spirit End, no immortal. It was there that we dealt with the gate of Hell's ghost-cherishing life. That's right. We cut him into 8 pieces, little Shuai added proudly. Muyu had always felt that the spirit extinction no immortal domain was very heaven-defying, because no one could use spells in this domain. Their spiritual power was completely suppressed, and they were like real mortals. In this type of domain, if one wanted to defeat an opponent, they had to rely on their flexibility and strength. At that time, Ghost-Cherishing Life had a strange magical technique. His body was similar to Duke Ming's old friend Jiangyu, who was trapped in the Twin Corp Sea. Muyu had the Shadow Clone Sword. Even if he couldn't use spirit energy, his sword techniques were still powerful. If Great Water City itself was a Tao artifact, or if Great Water City had a Tao artifact protecting it, then there must be someone in Great Water City who could control the primal yin and yang. Muyu needed to meet this person. Zhuge Shaoxing suppressed the shock in his heart. He thought for a moment and continued, "Oh right, there's one more thing that I find very strange. There are some people in Great Water City who don't have shadows." No shadows? There are people in this world who don't have shadows? Muyu furrowed his brows. Little Shuai continued, "Muyu, have you forgotten? The 2 people we met in Clearwater City, what were their names again? Oh right, Bai Yi Tian and Bai Yi Chan. They are people who don't have shadows." They don't have shadows? Are you sure? Muyu didn't notice this at first, because the first time he met Bai Yi Tian was at night. At that time, he was thinking about saving Mu Xian and didn't pay attention to this. The second time was after he met his senior brothers. He was a little depressed and didn't want to talk to the Shadowless clan. That's right. Bai Yi Tian came to find us twice. Both times he appeared, he stood in a very tricky position. He happened to be in the shadow of a rock in the desert. I couldn't tell if he had a shadow or not. But how could they hide their skills from me? Little Handsome snorted. Then why didn't you say so earlier? Muyu knocked Little Shuai's head. Didn't he say that he was from the Shadowless clan? The Shadowless clan, a clan without shadows. Doesn't that mean they don't have shadows? I thought you already knew about it, so I didn't mention it. Little Shuai blinked. Mu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He carefully recalled the 2 times he met the Shadowless clan, and he really didn't pay attention to this. He slowly said, "At that time, Bai Tian said that the Shadowless clan existed to destroy the Shadowless Man organization. I always thought that the Shadowless clan meant to eliminate the Shadowless Man organization from the world of cultivation. But it's strange, what's wrong?" Little Shuai asked. "Have you ever thought about one thing? We always thought that the Shadowless Man organization was a pawn of the Sanchong Palace, but the elder Yellow Spring of the Gate of Hell, who had been lurking in the Gate of Hell for so long, was actually a tribulation passing stage shadow killer of the Shadowless Man organization. If the Shadowless Man organization was a pawn of the Sanchong Palace, then Shadow Killer Yellow Spring should have helped the Gate of Hell. But at that time, Shadow Killer Yellow Spring chose to stand by and watch us kill Ghost Cold. This is obviously not right." At that time, Shadow Killer Yellow Spring came to Mu Yu for Qingyan. Qingyan had some connection with Shadow Killer Winter Solstice. Mu Yu guessed that Qingyan knew some major secrets of the Shadowless Man organization, so Shadow Killer Yellow Spring must find Qingyan. Mu Yu then analyzed, the shadow killers of the Shadowless Man organization all rely on shadows to kill people. If Bai Tian doesn't have a shadow, then this is very strange. Everyone in the 3rd celestial layer has a shadow. I have never heard of anyone without a shadow. If I'm not wrong, maybe the Shadowless clan is also an alien race outside the 3rd celestial layer, just like the Soul race, the Ghost race, and the Moon race. The Shadowless clan is also one of them. The more Mu thought about it, the more he felt that this possibility was very high. Then Chishui City was not as simple as a city without cultivators. It was very likely that it was the settlement of the Shadowless clan. But what is the origin of this Shadowless clan? Tian Ran asked. None of them knew the origin of the Shadowless clan. Only when Master Lu helped the Shadowless Man organization with their array business did he hear about the origin of the Shadowless clan. When Helian Kong was on the Demon Island, didn't he say that the origin of the Shadowless clan was to avenge the white-bearded old man? That young man, called by Liang Shang, got some pointers from the white-bearded old man, and then he soared into the sky, right? Mu Yu, Xiao Shuai said. Mu Yu shook his head and said, some of what Helian Kong Sr. said on the Demon Island can't be taken seriously. At that time, Helian Kong Sr. was a member of the 3rd Celestial Layer Palace. He guarded the secrets of the 3rd Celestial Layer Palace, and one of the rules he had to follow was confidentiality. So what he said about the origin of the Shadowless clan might just be a casual lie. Sectmaster, do you know how to get to Chishui City? Zhuge Xiaoshang said, I don't know. At that time, my cultivation was still very low. My ancestor used a great magical power to take me to a very ordinary river surrounded by fog. We kept walking along the river. Later, my ancestor took out a token and threw it into the river. Then we saw the city. Token. Chapter 1049. Token? Is it this one? Mu Yu's heart skipped a beat, and a black token appeared in his hand. This token didn't have any fancy patterns. Only the word Shadowless was engraved on it. Yes, this is it. But Mu Yu, how did you get this token? Zhuge Xiaosheng asked in surprise. Mu Yu replied, the Shadowless clan came to me and asked me to cooperate with them, but I refused. However, Bai Yuqian left me this token and said that he would wait for my news. In Clearwater City, in order to find Mu Yu, the Shadowless clan used some extreme methods. Mu Yu didn't like that Bai Yuqian kidnapped his family, so he didn't want to cooperate with the Shadowless clan. But now that he found that many things seemed to point to the Shadowless clan, he had to pay a visit to the Chishui City where the Shadowless clan was located. Mu Yu also had to figure out if Shadowless Killer Acheron wanted to find Chengyan, because Chengyan knew some important secrets of the Shadowless clan. If the Shadowless clan had some relationship with the Shadowless clan, would Chengyan also go to Chishui City to find the answer? There was also Xiangnan. Bai Yuqian and Bai Yechan wanted Mu Yu to help the Shadowless clan in Clearwater City, but they were rejected by Mu Yu. Would Bai Yuqian and Bai Yechan turn to Xiangnan? It must be known that Xiangnan's plan to destroy the Sanchong Palace in another way seemed to coincide with the Shadowless clan's plan. Muyu knew that the possibility of this was very high. Zhuge Xiaosheng asked hesitantly, Muyu, do you want to go to Qishui City? Why don't I go with you? Muyu shook his head. No need. At this juncture, the Array faction needs someone to oversee it. Sect Master, you can handle any sudden situations in the Array faction. Tian Ran and I will go there. Right now, the cultivation world was in turmoil. Although village chief Old Bu was a strategist, he was still a person without cultivation. Only with Zhuge Xiaosheng's assistance could he ensure that nothing would go wrong. Muyu and Tian Ran left the Array faction and arrived at a mountain not far from the Array faction. Tian Ran sat on a large rock and suggested, Muyu, where are we going to find Bai Yuqian now? Why don't we find a random river and throw the token in? Xiao Shuai laughed and said, then if it doesn't work, wouldn't we still have to go and fish for tokens? In my opinion, we should look for Xiao Shui. Xiao Shui will definitely be able to. Tian Ran pulled Xiao Shuai's ear. Xiao Shui, are you looking down on me because I'm useless? No, I like Big Sister Tian Ran. Big Sister Tian Ran is so powerful. How can I look down on you? Xiao Shui quickly jumped into Tian Ran's embrace and said fawningly, Liar, you must have said the same thing to Xiao Shui. Is it Muyu? Tian Ran tapped Xiao Shuai's forehead and turned to look at Muyu. Muyu helplessly glared at little Shui. Why did he have to blabber nonsense? He said in all seriousness, Little Shui, this guy likes to talk nonsense. Don't pay attention to him. We don't need to look for him. We just need to inject spirit energy into this black token, and that person called Bai Yuqian will come and find me. This is what he said last time. Muyu injected his spirit energy into the black token. After the black token absorbed Muyu's spirit energy, it suddenly flashed with a thick black light, as if it was swallowing the light around it. A strange fluctuation came from the black token. I want to see what kind of background your Shadowless clan has. Muyu let the token float in the air. The sun shone on the black token, and he discovered that there was no shadow on the token after the sun shone on it. After the black token absorbed Muyu's spiritual power, it lit up with a rich black color. Then, it turned into a cyan color and emitted a strange aura. The cyan token trembled and then began to fly into the distance. Is it going to lead the way for us? Muyu was stunned for a moment. Then he immediately called Tian Ran to follow it. The token flew very fast, but it was still far slower than Muyu. After all, Muyu was a tribulation passing stage self-cultivator. Following the token, he sped through the air, passing by numerous lofty mountains and precipitous ridges, mountains and rivers. After flying for about an hour, the token turned a corner and sped down. Muyu had been paying attention to the places the token passed by. Although he had no sense of direction and had a bad sense of direction for the first time, he would not forget the road once he had walked it once. Therefore, after he memorized the route, he began to have doubts. Isn't this the direction to Wuqiu City? That's strange. Is Wuqiu City Qi Shui City? Xiao Shuai asked curiously. Qi Shui City was a city surrounded by rivers, so it was unlikely that Wuqiu City was related to Qi Shui City. However, the token did not go to Wuqiu City. Instead, it went to a mountain range outside Wuqiu City and then rushed towards the mountain stream. At this time, two extremely powerful auras came from the mountain stream. Terrifying fluctuations came from the mountain stream. The entire mountain stream was filled with smoke and dust. It had been destroyed beyond recognition. This is the aura of a tribulation passing stage cultivator. Who is fighting here? Muyu and Tian Ran looked at each other and saw a trace of confusion in each other's eyes. Xiao Shuai quickly grabbed the token that was about to fly down and did not let it go any further. Then, a powerful invisibility formation wrapped around them and covered their auras. In the mountain stream, two figures were fiercely fighting. These two people were a man and a woman. Both of them looked to be around 30 years old and were in the tribulation passing stage. The man's cultivation was stronger, but Muyu had never seen them before. In addition, not far from the mountain stream, there was another person whose aura was restrained. He was dressed in a black robe. This person did not reveal any skin and was covered by a hood. He seemed to be enjoying the fight between the two people. Shihongi, your threefold palace is really something. You can even control our people. The man in brown clothes stared at the figure covered in a black robe in the distance with an extremely angry expression. Then, his gaze fell on the woman in yellow opposite him and revealed a trace of worry. Shangguan, your people from the Shadowless clan don't know how to appreciate kindness. Since you participated in this game, we must play properly. The black-robed man from the threefold palace was Shihongi, who had gone to capture the old village chief in the Moyun mountain range. He was ranked 8th on the Supreme Immortal list. Despicable. The man called Shangguan spat. Then, he dodged a blade shadow from his people opposite him. He anxiously said to the woman in yellow, Junior Sister Morong, how did you get into trouble? The battle between Shang Guanlin and the yellow-clothed woman was earth-shattering. The entire mountain stream had already been destroyed beyond recognition. However, Shang Guanlin's cultivation was clearly higher than the yellow-clothed woman's, but he had been merciful to the yellow-clothed woman. Obviously, he did not want to hurt her. Shang Guanlin, aren't we going to find this guy? I didn't expect him to be a member of the Shadowless clan. Muyu, who was watching from the sky, said thoughtfully. On the Supreme Immortal list, Shangguan was ranked 41st, but it showed that he was a rogue cultivator. It seemed that the so-called rogue cultivators on the Supreme Immortal list were not as simple as they seemed. What? You can't bear to make a move on Morongyan? Looks like I have to do it myself. Shihongi sneered. The black robe on his body suddenly shattered. Then white soul power instantly spread out from his body. He was like a divine god standing in the sky, making people exclaim in admiration. One had to admit that the threefold palace used soul power to disguise themselves. They looked very convincing to many self-cultivators. It's Shangguan and Morongyan. Both of them are the targets we're looking for, right? Strange. So Morongyan has already fallen into the hands of the threefold palace. Little Shuai said, Morongyan, ranked 51st on the Supreme Immortal list. But according to village chief Old Boo's calculations, this Morongyan was not simple. At first, everyone was a little suspicious of village chief Old Boo's words. Only Muyu believed it. But now, it seemed that village chief Old Boo's eyes were very sharp. Morongyan and Shangguan were both members of the Shadowless clan. But Morongyan was already under Shihongi's control. Shihongi was using Morongyan to deal with Shangguan. Soul Technique Luo Yin, Heavenly Demon Seal. 9 blood-colored soul beads had already appeared in front of Shihongi's chest. They quickly merged together in the air and formed a huge seal that was thousands of feet tall. It was like a mountain that could hold up a mountain. It was so heavy that it pressed down on the surrounding space. It was as if the entire space could not withstand this mountain and was about to collapse. Shangguan angrily snorted. He waved a long spear in his hand. The long spear flickered with a cold light. With a flash, the long spear had already collided with Shihongi's huge seal. The two collided with each other and let out a deafening sound. Shangguan took a step back, but Shihongi did not move at all. Shihongi's strength was still slightly stronger than Shangguan. It's the maggots from the threefold palace. Should we go and teach them a lesson? Little Shuai asked while rubbing his hands. Wait, let's see how much strength this Shangguan is hiding first. Muyu did not act rashly. They were attracted here by the Shadowless clan's token. It seemed that the token should be used to find the Shadowless clan's own people. Muyu had already seen Shihongi's strength before. He was at least in the 8th heaven of the passing tribulation realm. He was extremely powerful. Shangguan, who was only ranked 41st on the Extreme Immortal ranking, only took a step back when facing Shihongi, who was ranked 8th on the Extreme Immortal ranking. This Shadowless clan was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. They were not inferior to the threefold palace. In front of our soul clan, your Shadowless clan can only submit. Shihongi shouted once again, and the majestic heavenly devil seal already pressed down towards Shang Guanlin from all directions. At this time, Murong Yun also rushed over from another direction. Murong Yun's cultivation was also in the fifth heaven of the passing tribulation realm. Although she was not as good as the other two, it was already quite shocking that she could reach the passing tribulation realm at the age of 30. Bang! Shang Guanlin was sent flying. He could barely fight Shi Hongyi to a draw, but when Murong Yun was added, he was instantly at a disadvantage. You should also obediently work for our soul clan. Chapter 10:50. Shang Guanlin was furious, but there was nothing he could do. Just as he was about to be controlled, a golden lotus suddenly bloomed from above. The lotus was filled with a monstrous sword intent that swept into the sky. Immediately after, a sword aura swayed with immortal light fell toward Shi Hongyi. I hate people from the third layer palace the most. Tian Rant's graceful figure had already appeared in the sky. Her expression was indifferent, like a lotus flower emerging from the water, untainted by the smoke and fire of the mortal world. The golden lotus image rotated around the sword aura. This sword aura was elegant and sharp, directly approaching Shi Hongyi's face. What? Shi Hongyi's originally complacent face changed in an instant. He felt the horror of this lotus sword intent. He didn't expect that a crossing calamity stage master would appear halfway at this time. When he fixed his eyes on it, his face suddenly became furious. The heavenly daughter of the Red Dust sect, you are still alive. Whoosh! Shi Hongyi had already retreated. At this time, the immortal Dew Sword's sword intent was 3 inches away from him. If he was a second late, he would have been split in half by Tian Ran, a mere transcending tribulation third-layer cultivator with a heavenly sword is actually so powerful. The heavenly sword of Jian Ying Chunfeng is indeed worthy of its reputation. The moment Shi Hongyi saw Tian Ran appear, a trace of anger flashed across his face, but he was not afraid of anything. 1 against 1, Tian Ran wouldn't cause any harm to him. He was also confident that he could capture Shang Guanlin. Tian Ran was a transcending tribulation 5th-layer cultivator, so he and Murong Yun would still have the upper hand against Tian Ran and Shang Guanlin. It's you. Shang Guanlin was also surprised when he saw Tian Ran appear, but his expression didn't relax. Although Tian Ran's heavenly sword was powerful, Shi Hongyi's was even more powerful. You know me? Tian Ran curiously asked. The heavenly daughter of the Red Dust sect, your relationship with Jian Ying Chunfeng is not shallow. I have long heard of your name. Shang Guanlin politely said. Tian Ran frowned. Could it be that Shang Guanlin also knew that she was Jian Ying Chunfeng's daughter? Don't worry. Our Shadowless clan's reinforcements will be here soon. As long as we can hold on for a little longer, Shi Hongyi won't be able to escape today. Shang Guanlin stared at Shi Hongyi. At the same time, he looked at Murong Yun worriedly and said, Miss Tian Ran, that woman is my junior sister. Please don't kill her. Tian Ran nodded her head. Murong Yun's cultivation was above hers, but she could rely on the immortal Dew sword to barely fight against Murong Yun. Are the people of the Shadowless clan so talented? Tian Ran thought to herself. Every one of them had a higher cultivation than her. Actually, Tian Ran was thinking too much. She and Mu Yu were only in their early 20s, while Shang Guanlin and Murong Yun were already in their 30s. They started cultivating a few years earlier than Mu Yu and Tian Ran. They were all heaven's favored children. Tian Ran and Mu Yu were naturally more talented than Shang Guanlin and Murong Yun. It's useless even if you guys work together. Today, I only wanted to capture 2 reckless Shadowless clan members. I didn't think that there would be such a pleasant surprise. It just so happens that the heavenly daughter of the Red Dust sect is also here. It saves me the trouble of looking for her personally. Shi Hongyi sneered. The 9 white soul pearls around him revolved around him, emitting an incomparably holy light. Where did you get the confidence to think that you can capture the people here? An elegant figure in blue landed in front of Shi Hongyi, causing Shi Hongyi's face to twist again. Mu Yu, Shihangi almost squeezed out these two words from the gaps of his teeth. Muyu looked indifferently at the Soul Clan member. There was only life and death between him and the Soul Clan member. Shihangi narrowed his eyes and sneered. It's actually you? It's a pity that I didn't kill you last time in the Moyun mountain range. What? The disciple of a true god who only knows how to run still wants to stop me? At that time, Muyu was besieged by the Grand Ascension Stage Palace Envoy, crossing Tribulation Stage Guku and Shihangi. At that time, his strength had just stepped into the crossing Tribulation Stage. He was far from being a match for these three people. And now, only a few months had passed. Shihangi's cultivation was at the 8th heavenly layer of the crossing Tribulation Stage. In his opinion, no matter how powerful Muyu was impossible for him to grow to a level that could threaten him in just a few months. With Shihangi's pride as a Soul Clan member, he was confident that he could face these three people at the same time. I'm not stopping you. The shadow clone sword in Muyu's hand trembled slightly, and a sword chi mixed with mysterious array patterns merged around his body. Muyu's eyes became indifferent. I'm killing you. Shihangi laughed. You want to kill me with just the three of you? Now you don't have the domain ability of a Grand Ascension Stage cultivator, the help of the opening Ruins Cauldron, and the protection of the falling Dust Mountain Array. Where do you get the confidence to kill me? In the past, the people of the 3rd Heavenly Layer Palace who died at the hands of Muyu were either lower in cultivation than Muyu, or were killed by Muyu using various powerful treasures and trump cards. Even if the Gate of Hell and Stargate were destroyed by Muyu, and Ghost Cold died, he believed that it was because the people of the Gate of Hell lost their twins. Shihangi's cultivation was at the 8th heavenly layer, so he was not afraid of Muyu at all. Shang Guanlin knew how powerful Shihangi was. He said to Tian Ran anxiously, Muyu is no match for him. We have to work together to kill him. Tian Ran did not move or respond. She just looked at Muyu quietly. Muyu still faced Shihangi indifferently. He did not like to talk too much during a battle. The sword chi in his hand suddenly rose from the ground and disappeared into the thousands of miles of sky, stirring up a magnificent and majestic green light. This momentum was constantly growing, and the entire sky was faintly trembling. However, Shihangi's face was still full of contempt. So what if a person who had no trump cards had the Heaven Sword? He was the 8th person on the Extreme Immortal ranking, one of the top 9 Extreme Immortals. His strength was not on the same level as the people of the 3rd Heavenly Layer Palace who were killed by Muyu in the past. Muyu, I'm different from the trash you killed. Today, I'll let you know what true strength is. You'd better surrender obediently. Shihangi had already leaped into the sky, and his whole body bloomed with a sacred white light. The 9 soul pearls rotated rapidly around him and condensed behind him, forming an illusory big seal. The big seal was heavy and powerful, squeezing the void, like a mountain pressing down on everyone's chests. Shihangi shouted, Soul Dharmaluo in swoosh. The sword chi in the thousands of miles of sky suddenly became extremely terrifying. The sword chi rose in an instant, and the whole sky seemed to be trembling because of this heaven sword. The sword chi seemed to have shattered the sky, and the green sword light merged into the void. When it reappeared, it was already above Shihangi. Shihangi's voice came to an abrupt end. He opened his eyes in horror, and his face was full of disbelief. A neat and cold sword light appeared from the center of his head to the bottom of his body. How can this be? Shihangi spat out the last 3 words from his throat. Then, countless cracks appeared on his body, and sword chi overflowed from every crack. His whole body was like a cracked porcelain. Bang! Shihangi's body suddenly exploded into thousands of fragments. However, these fragments didn't fly far before they were crushed by the powerful sword chi, turning into ashes that no longer existed. The seemingly powerful and majestic heavenly demon seal behind him was rolled up into white stars, disappearing without a trace. Instant kill. A real instant kill. Shang Guanlin was extremely shocked. He looked at Muyu with a face full of shock. Just a moment ago, he said that Muyu was no match for Shihangi and wanted to help him with Tian Ran. But who would have thought that Mu Yu's strength was already so high? Shi Hongyi, who was ranked 8th on the extreme immortal ranking and had passed through the 8th heaven of the tribulation stage, died before he could even use the heavenly devil seal. Shang Guanlin swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Only now did he understand how powerful Mu Yu was. According to the information collected by the Shadowless clan, Mu Yu had just broken through the tribulation stage a few months ago. But in just a few months, Mu Yu already had the ability to kill the 8th on the extreme immortal ranking. He knew that he and the people of the Third Palace had underestimated Mu Yu too much. How could the disciple of a true god be so simple? I thought that after the destruction of the Stargate and the Gate of Hell, you would be a little smarter. I didn't expect you to still be so arrogant. Mu Yu waved his hand indifferently. The sword chi that connected the 9 heavens disappeared, and the shadow swords also disappeared into the void. The formation under his feet flashed, and he appeared behind Murong Yun, who was being controlled by the people of the Third Palace. He stretched out 2 fingers and pointed at the back of Murong Yun's head. When Shang Guanlin saw Mu Yu approaching Murong Yun, he reacted and shouted anxiously, "Fellow Taoist Mu Yu, have mercy. She is a member of the Shadowless clan. Don't kill her." However, the formation in Mu Yu's hand had already merged with Murong Yun's mind and destroyed the soul formation in Murong Yun's mind. Then, he said calmly, "I only removed the control of the Third Palace on her." Murong Yun let out a painful groan and then fell down. Shang Guanlin caught her in time. He checked Murong Yun's condition and found that she was still alive. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at Mu Yu in surprise. "Fellow Taoist Mu Yu, why are you here?" Shang Guanlin didn't dare to underestimate Mu Yu anymore. Mu Yu was able to kill Shi Hongyi with 1 sword strike. This meant that his strength was far beyond his. Mu Yu took out the token that belonged to the Shadowless clan and said, "It brought me here." "This Shadowless token came from you?" Shang Guanlin was startled. "I thought it was our Shadowless clan's reinforcements coming here, because I felt the aura of the Shadowless token, but I didn't know who it was. The Shadowless token you mentioned was given to me by Bai Yutian. I thought it would bring me to find Bai Yutian." Mu Yu said. Shang Guanlin used his spiritual power to suspend Murong Yun and said, "After the Shadowless token is injected with spiritual power, it will automatically look for the nearest Shadowless token. This is the contact method of the Shadowless clan. Fortunately, I was lucky. I didn't expect you to save my life today." "Of course you were lucky. Cut the crap. Tell us, is Xiang Nan in your Qi Shui city? You guys who don't have shadows, tell us the truth." Xiao Shui asked loudly on Mu Yu's shoulder. Chapter 10:51. It seems like Taoist Mu Yu already knows about our Shadowless clan. Shang Guanlin nodded slightly. He wasn't surprised that Mu Yu knew about the Shadowless clan. The Qi Shui city wasn't a secret to some people. After Shang Guanlin confirmed that Murong Yun was fine, he continued, "A while ago, someone else went to Qi Shui city to look for Xiang Nan. Was it Cheng Yan?" Mu Yu asked calmly. "Yes, it was Cheng Yan. I have to say that the disciples of a true god are all extraordinary. Cheng Yan has already impressed me. I didn't expect you to become so powerful as well." Shang Guanlin praised. Cheng Yan was very powerful. He was so powerful that Shang Guanlin couldn't help but admire him. "Are Cheng Yan and Xiang Nan still in Qi Shui city?" Mu Yu didn't care about Shang Guanlin's praise. He just wanted to find his senior brother and figure out some things. Shang Guanlin shook his head. "Xiang Nan did come to Qi Shui city a long time ago, but he didn't want to work with us. Cheng Yan was the same. We don't know where they are now, but I think you should know what Xiang Nan and Luo Shang did, right?" Mu Yu naturally knew that the Red Dust sect was destroyed by Xiang Nan and Luo Shang. However, the rumor in the cultivation world was that it was Yumon who destroyed the Red Dust sect. "I want to see the city lord of Qi Shui city," Mu Yu said. Shang Guanlin's eyes flashed with a strange light. "Before we came out, the city lord told us that if we met you and you wanted to ask him to deal with the Third Palace, he wouldn't interfere. Our Shadowless clan doesn't want to get involved in the cultivation world's disputes." "Really?" If you don't want to get involved in the cultivation world's disputes, then why do you want to work with us? Don't you think that's a bit funny? Muyu said coldly. The Shadowless clan had wanted to cooperate with Muyu for a few years. Now, they were saying that they didn't want to get involved. It seemed like something had happened. Shang Guanlin's expression changed. Then, he said, there are many things that you don't understand. The Sanshong Palace is not as simple as you think. Then tell me so that I can understand, Muyu said simply. Shang Guanlin shook his head. The threefold palace is already so powerful that you can only look up to it. Although you are very powerful, the threefold palace is far from what you can deal with. What they want to do is not something that our Shadowless clan can stop. This world has come to an end. Muyu coldly looked at Shang Guanlin. With a schwa sound, the shadow clone sword in his hand swept across Shang Guanlin's body. The sharp sword chi instantly cut off Shang Guanlin's hair, and a chill invaded Shang Guanlin's body, causing him to involuntarily shiver. Shang Guanlin's expression changed. What are you doing? I'm not looking for you to listen to depressing words. If you don't want to say it, then there's no need for me to keep you alive. You clans that don't belong to the third heaven are always so self-righteous, but you can't do anything at all. Since you want to stay out of this, then rather than letting you wander around and be controlled by the threefold palace and cause trouble for me in the future, why don't I just kill you directly? It'll save me a lot of trouble. A murderous intent flashed in Muyu's eyes. He didn't like Shang Guanlin's attitude. It was just like how Shang Guanlin behaved in Clearwater City. Shang Guanlin had a self-righteous attitude that said, I know more than you, so you should listen to me. Under such circumstances, there was no need for him to be polite to Shang Guanlin. Since he didn't know what was good for him, then he would kill him. Otherwise, if he was controlled in the future, he would have to kill him again. It would be even more troublesome. Shang Guanlin looked shocked. How do you know that we're not a third heaven clan? Muyu said contemptuously. What? Is this what you mean by, I don't understand? You guys that don't belong to the third heaven, and you think you're very mysterious? That you're one level higher than everyone in the third heaven? I've already killed a few soul race clansmen that are inexplicably confident. I don't mind killing a few more shadowless clansmen. Shang Guanlin's expression finally became serious, but he still gritted his teeth and said, even if you know this, it's useless. Let me tell you, the soul race is just being instructed by someone else. The existence behind the soul race, is it the so-called Heavenly Keeper? Muyu asked. You even know about the Heavenly Keeper? Shang Guanlin exclaimed. Muyu looked at Shang Guanlin with disdain. It seems that you're still too self-righteous. You treat all third heaven clansmen as fools. If you don't want to say it, I'll kill you and go find the Shadowless race. I think the Shadowless race is still very interested in you. Since the Shadowless race and the Shadowless race were enemies, Muyu's threat was enough to carry weight. Shang Guanlin clenched his fists. Only now did he realize how ridiculous he was. It turned out that everything he knew, Muyu already knew. And the Shadowless race and the Shadowless race were sworn enemies. If Muyu cooperated with the Shadowless race, it would obviously be disadvantageous to the Shadowless race. I admit that I underestimated you, Shang Guanlin said solemnly. I've seen the same attitude from Bai Yetian. You'd better answer my question. What's the name of the city lord of your Qi Shui city? Otherwise, I'll control you myself and kill you. Muyu's killing intent toward Shang Guanlin still didn't decrease. He hated arrogant clansmen like the Shadowless race the most. He just wanted to get rid of the real trouble now. He didn't want to leave any trouble for himself. If he didn't say it, Muyu would definitely kill him. Shang Guanlin had also realized Muyu's current attitude. He gritted his teeth and said, Our city lord is called Bai Mozhang. That's all I can tell you. Bai Mozhang? Is he a master of the Grand Ascension stage? Muyu frowned. At first, he guessed that the city lord of Qi Shui City was Zhan Henshi, but then he realized a problem. The Shadowless race was not from the third celestial layer, so their city lord was naturally not from the third celestial layer. And Zhan Henshi was a third celestial layer with eternal life, so he shouldn't be a member of the Shadowless race. Yes, Shang Guanlin said solemnly. Muyu was silent for a moment. Since the shadowless race was a race outside the third celestial layer, they must know how to hide themselves. But he still had one more question. Then, do you know a person called Zhang Henshi? Zhang Henshi? The 9 immortal cultivators? We don't know him. Shang Guanlin shook his head and continued. Zhang Henshi is a very mysterious person. It can be said that he is as mysterious as your master, Jianing Qinfeng. He is arrogant. Except for your master, he doesn't give face to anyone. Even our city lord has never seen him. We guess that he shouldn't be in the third celestial layer, but in another world. After all, the third celestial layer is still too small. When one's cultivation reaches a certain level, they will choose to travel to other worlds. By Mo Shang, Chu Buku, and I Lei Jinren, Zhang Henshi, the monster king of the monster race. Sure enough, there were still a lot of third celestial layer Deshang stage masters. It seemed that there must be a powerful Deshang stage master in the Silhouette being organization. But since by Mo Shang of the shadowless race chose to stand by and watch, the Silhouette being organization certainly wouldn't intervene. It was very difficult to rely on these people to deal with the third celestial layer palace. At present, Muyu could only rely on his fellow disciples. Did Wan of the evil sect go to Qi Shui city to look for you? Muyu asked again. Shang Guanlin's answer this time was simple. Wan did look for us. She wanted to find the whereabouts of Xie, but Xie and your master disappeared at the same time, so we are not very clear about this. Then where is she now? Muyu also needed to make sure that Wan was not controlled by the people of the third celestial layer palace. We don't dare to provoke the golden boy and jade girl of the evil sect. The two of them are very strong. Although their cultivation hasn't reached the Deshang stage yet, even Deshang stage masters may not be able to capture them. It's impossible for us to track their whereabouts, just like how we can't track you 4 fellow disciples. Shang Guanlin looked at Muyu and said with a strange look in his eyes, Shimen Wuji and Wan are the same as you 4 fellow disciples. Their cultivation talent is second to none. After all, they're the 2 most favored disciples of Xie. It is no exaggeration to say that their potential is not weaker than yours. Shimen Wuji and Wan were 2 of the few people in the cultivation world who were as famous as Jianing and Chunfeng's disciples. No one dared to provoke the 2 of them. The 2 of them flirted with the genius girls and middle-aged men of various sects, but they still lived a carefree life. This was enough to show how powerful they were. Muyu coldly snorted and said, Do you know Yuma? Shang Guanlin was startled. Why are you looking for Yuma? The same reason I'm looking for you. Muyu said indifferently. Shang Guanlin's face turned pale. Although he and Murongyun were strong, they were still slightly inferior in front of the third celestial layer palace. If it wasn't for Muyu's timely arrival, they would have definitely become puppets in the hands of the third celestial layer palace. Shang Guanlin pondered for a moment and replied, Yuma is a member of the Shadowless Man organization. She is the saintess of the Shadowless clan and is as powerful as the young master of our Shadowless clan. Is the young master of your Shadowless clan Xiaoran? Muyu asked. Yes. Muyu raised his eyebrows. Yuma, who was only ranked 52nd on the Supreme Immortal list, was actually the saintess of the Shadowless clan. And that so-called Xiaoran was also so powerful. Even Shang Guanlin and Murongyun were both tribulation passing stage experts. Sure enough, the few people that the village head guessed had powerful backgrounds. Muyu was silent for a moment and said indifferently, Then I think your young master shouldn't have fallen into the same situation as you. Shang Guanlin's face turned a little ugly after being mocked, but he couldn't refute anything. He thought that he knew some things and looked down on the third celestial layer cultivators. However, some of the third celestial layer cultivators were so powerful that they were unreasonable. Even his life today was saved by Muyu. This person is strong enough to fight with the young master, right? Shang Guanlin pondered. Muyu stared at Shang Guanlin thoughtfully. The array pattern in his hand flickered, and the shadow, sword disappeared. You'd better not fall into the hands of the third celestial layer palace again. Otherwise, the next time we meet, I will not show mercy. Muyu and Tian turned around and were about to leave. Shang Guanlin seemed to have thought of something and said, "Oh, right, there's one more thing I need you to deal with." Chapter 1052. The wind on the mountain was very strong, causing their clothes to flutter noisily. Muyu sat on the mountain peak and looked at the city in the distance, lost in thought. Shang Guanlin had left, but he received bad news. Xiao Shuai snorted and said, "That guy really knows how to cause trouble for us." Muyu didn't say anything. He knew that this matter wasn't that simple. Tian Ran patted Xiao Shuai's head and asked Muyu, "What's our plan?" Muyu stood up and looked at the white clouds in the sky. She was elegant and relaxed. Then she calmly said, "Kill." There was a small gambling city in the north of Pill City. It was a paradise for gamblers. Most of the Supreme Immortals on the Supreme Immortal leaderboard had appeared on the gambling table in the gambling city. The shadow killer of the silhouette being was also a common bet on the gambling table. Here, life was the biggest bet. Anyone could bet on it. After gambling a lot of money, it often meant that the Supreme Immortal on the Supreme Immortal leaderboard would be replaced. The city lord of the gambling city was a genius gambling god who was proficient in all kinds of gambling techniques. Du Being. Not only was he good at gambling, but he was also good at running a gambling house. The rule of the gambling city was that there were no rules. Here, only gambling was accepted. No matter how high or low one's cultivation was, rich or poor, one would be a gambler in the gambling city. There were only transactions of money and the thrill of gambling. Even the powerful members of the Eight Gates didn't dare to act recklessly in the gambling city. This was because this was the territory of the evil sections. Causing trouble in the evil sect's territory was the last thing a cultivator wanted to do. But today was different. The sky was clear and blue, and the clouds were white. In the city lord's mansion, the locust tree in the courtyard was full of vitality and swayed slightly. Two people were sitting on a stone chair. Duke Being furrowed his brows, as if something was bothering him. Sitting opposite him was the pale-faced Zhuang Yuan. Zhuang Yuan clenched his fists, looking very irritated. "Did he walk here?" Du Being asked. "Yes, he'll be here soon." Zhuang Yuan nodded. The two fell into silence and didn't speak for a long time, as if they were thinking about something. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. The wind rustled the treetops, and a few black crows let out a few sharp cries. The evil die in Du Being's hand flickered with a demonic red light as it revolved around his fingertips. A trace of ruthlessness appeared on his face. "Is the incident at Luyin Garden related to him?" Du Being asked. Luyin Yuan was ambushed by the Sanchong Palace, and only the top scholar survived. Zhuang Yuanlang shook his head. "It has nothing to do with him, but what happens next is related to him." Speaking of this, Du Being and the scholars' hearts seemed to sink slightly. That was a person who made them feel extremely fearful. "Where is Shiman Wuching?" Du Being asked in a deep voice. "No, I can't find him," Zhuang Yuanlang said. "Then Wan." Du Being clenched his fists and hesitated. Plop! On the locust tree in the courtyard, two crows suddenly flapped their wings and flew into the sky, leaving behind a chilling caw. A few black feathers slowly floated down from the sky, landing on the table in front of Du Being. Those feathers flickered with a demonic light and disappeared in an instant. Zhuang Yuanlang and Du Being looked at each other and stood up, their eyes filled with coldness. "They're here, welcoming guests," the scholar said. Du Being flicked his sleeve and walked outside. "Those who come are guests. Our gambling city has never had a reason to not welcome guests." The evil die turned into a red light and disappeared from his fingertips. In the middle of the gambling city was an open-air casino. The gambling here was simple and straightforward. Life and death gambling. It was a spacious square arena that was 800 meters long. It was paved with the most expensive, mysterious crystal slabs in the cultivation world. Even a body fusion expert wouldn't be able to leave a mark on the slabs. Next to the arena was a row of iron fences that flickered with light. There were also traces of dried blood, which was a ghastly sight. The life and death arena was the place where cultivators settled their grudges. The gambling city's arena was very famous. Many gamblers would go crazy here, making their blood boil. Dubying was very smart. He attracted many people with grudges in the cultivation world here. As long as they settled the matter of life and death here, the person who survived would get a reward of 10 million spirit stones. The minimum cultivation level requirement was the spirit severing stage. 10 million spirit stones was a number that was enough to make people crazy. As long as the enemy came here to fight to the death, someone would get 10 million spirit stones in every life and death battle. Dubying never lost money. Every day, there would be a steady stream of gamblers pouring into the gambling city. In every life and death arena, there would be thousands of gamblers betting. Everyone could bet in a variety of ways, whether it was an instant kill, 3 moves, 10 breaths, or a counterattack. The gambling city would take a cut from all the gambling methods. Even if each method only took a cut, the profit of a life and death arena was far more than 10 million spirit stones. The gambling city was extremely lively. Every gamble meant that someone would die. Blood easily aroused the senses of many people who pursued excitement. The gamblers here were very crazy. They liked to gamble with blood. Every time a person fell, the cheers would shake the sky and make the whole gambling city shake. Death was very cheap in the life and death arena, as if it was a tool for fun. However, death was very precious in the life and death arena because death represented countless money. However, at a certain moment, the atmosphere in the gambling city seemed to freeze. It was as if something was strangling everyone's throat. No matter how rampant the gamblers were, they did not dare to make a noise. Only the sound of steady footsteps could be heard on the street. Here came 2 talented people. They walked on the street and walked step by step towards the life and death arena. They walked very slowly, but every step seemed to step on the hearts of the gamblers, making them miss a beat. It was an arrogant and indifferent youth. He was dressed very plainly, and there was no fluctuation of cultivation on his body. He was like a low-level chi refining stage cultivator. He carried a heavy broadsword on his back. The broadsword was rusty and full of cracks, as if it would break into a pile of scrap metal with a touch. However, no one dared to look down on this ordinary broadsword. Even more so, no one dared to look down on the hidden youth. He was very famous now, and his origin was also very extraordinary. Like Jian Ying and Chun Feng's disciples, he was a genius from the Mayan mountain range. His name was Gui Tian, the real dark horse on the supreme immortal ranking. The other youth was dressed in Sword Cleansing Valley's uniform. His face was gloomy, but his aura was like the sun at noon. He did not restrain it at all and attacked everyone like a storm. It was as if he was deliberately trying to intimidate everyone present, making the thrill-seeking gamblers feel a deep sense of fear. Heavenly Spine Sword, a genius from Sword Cleansing Valley, ranked 23rd in the Supreme Immortal ranking. Gui Tian and Heavenly Spine Sword walked on the street and slowly walked towards the open-air gambling house. The gamblers along the way looked at them in horror. They entered the open-air gambling house, which was already filled with thousands of gamblers, as if they were all waiting for them. This gambling house was unprecedentedly grand. Being frowned as he looked at the 2 people in the distance. Although his cultivation had reached the body fusion stage, he still felt a chill. They were people he could not afford to offend. However, people from evil sects were never afraid of death. Even if someone held a knife to their neck, they would not be afraid. The 2 people had already walked over slowly. A fallen leaf was blown from the alley. It rolled across the smooth street and landed lightly at Gui Tian's feet. The leaf trembled slightly, and for some reason, it shattered into powder. Are you here to solve the problem of life and death? Dubying looked at the 2 people coldly. He was not as smooth as he used to be when he welcomed guests from all over the place. He only had a kind of solemnity. Heavenly Spine Sword looked at Dubying indifferently and said, "Yes, the problem of your life and death." Dubying asked again. Heavenly Spine Sword sneered, and the evil sex Jade Maiden. Their goal was very simple. Heavenly Spine Sword had never put Dubying in his eyes. A tribulation passing expert was already standing at the peak of the cultivation world. Duke Being's expression did not change at all. He asked calmly, 2 against 1? I won't participate in the battle. Heavenly Spine Sword's gaze fell on Gu Etian. Heavenly Spine Sword's task was not to participate in the battle, but to supervise the battle. With Boyong Doran's life, Heavenly Spine Sword did not need to do anything. Someone would take care of all the problems for him. Gu Etian did not say anything. He just walked indifferently towards the arena. There was already a charming woman standing there. She was the evil sex Jade Maiden, Wan Wan, who was famous in the cultivation world for toying with middle-aged men. Her figure could be said to be a perfect goddess in the eyes of men. Her curves were beautiful, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. If they could touch such a graceful body, it would be worth it even if they died. A green gauze covered her body. The green gauze casually poured down, but it just happened to cover the parts that should be covered. It was revealing, but not revealing. The wind brushed against her gauze, as if it was about to blow the gauze away. In the next moment, her peerless body would be revealed. However, the gauze just hung on her body and did not fall off. This made many gamblers itch unbearably. Gu Etian walked up the stage. His footsteps were very steady, and every step he took was very real. I only have one question. Wan Wan smiled. That smile was captivating and captivating, seducing the souls of countless gamblers. Gu Etian did not speak. He rarely spoke, especially when he was doing something that he did not like to do. Other than his master, Gu Etian only cared about his sword and opponents worthy of drawing his sword. In his eyes, Wan Wan was. Last words? Heavenly Spine's sword did not enter the arena. He looked coldly at Wan Wan and answered the question for Gu Etian. Why don't you come up together? Wan Wan asked with a smile. Heavenly Spine's sword said disdainfully, You want to fight 1 against 2? Wan Wan shook her head. I like to fight 1 against 1. If I go up, it will be 1 against 2. Heavenly Spine's sword sneered. Wan Wan revealed a devastatingly beautiful smile. The millions of gamblers in the spectator stands secretly swallowed their saliva. That smile could make them go through fire and water, climb a mountain of swords, dive into a sea of fire, do anything for her. You misunderstood me. Wan Wan's gauze fluttered in the wind. She was still smiling. If you come up, it will be 1 against 1. Heavenly Spine sword frowned. The bracelet on Wan Wan's wrist jingled. It was crisp and pleasant. Because killing you is just a matter of convenience. It will not affect my battle with him, Wan Wan said. Chapter 1053. Wan Wan's words weren't loud, but there were tens of thousands of gamblers in the open-air casino. None of them dared to make a ruckus, so they could hear everything clearly. No one would have thought that the evil sex Jade Maiden would say such words. Heavenly Spine Sword, the genius of Sword Cleansing Valley who was ranked 23rd on the Supreme Immortal ranking. Wan Wan actually said that killing him was just a matter of convenience. Although everyone knew that Wan Wan was very powerful, she wasn't powerful enough to kill Heavenly Spine Sword. Arrogant. Heavenly Spine Sword squeezed out these 2 words from between his teeth. Threefold Palace didn't want to keep the evil sex Golden Boy and Jade Maiden. They didn't even have the thought of controlling Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan. They just wanted to kill them and give this mission to Gu Etian. But in Heavenly Spine Sword's eyes, Wan Wan was insignificant and he could just do it himself. But now, he was being looked down upon by Wan Wan. As a genius swordsman of Sword Cleansing Valley, how could he endure this? Gu Etian, you don't need to do anything today. I alone am enough. Heavenly Spine Sword said coldly. Gu Etian glanced at Heavenly Spine Sword and still didn't want to say anything. Heavenly Spine Sword walked onto the stage, and a sword ray appeared in his hand as he pointed it at Wan Wan. I don't like to kill women, but you must die today. Heavenly Spine Sword ray was cold and austere. Violent sword energy surrounded the sword. The air around the sword seemed to have collapsed, and cracks appeared in the void, unable to withstand this terrifying sword aura. The sword stabbed out. All the gamblers held their breaths. That sword was too terrifying. It was clearly aimed at Wan Wan, but it seemed to be aimed at everyone present. They couldn't help but tremble in fear. This was a terrifying sword aura that was unstoppable. Heavenly Spine Sword, the genius of Sword Cleansing Valley, who was known as the spine of the firmament, had carved his sword aura into the hearts of all the gamblers. They couldn't forget it. Would Wan's frail body be able to block such a terrifying strike? All the gamblers felt pity. If such a beautiful woman like Wan were to die under Heavenly Spine Sword, it would be the biggest regret in the cultivation world. Wan still had a smile on her face. Even when Heavenly Spine Sword attacked, her expression didn't change. She didn't even move her hand. The light breeze caused her muslin clothes to flutter. The green muslin wrapped around her arm suddenly grew longer and longer in the wind. It actually lightly welcomed the Heavenly Spine Sword. When the weak scarf faced the unparalleled sword energy, everyone secretly felt pity. This was not a battle at all. How could the scarf block the Heavenly Spine Sword? This was indeed not a battle of the same level. With a light ring, Wan's scarf actually shattered the Heavenly Spine Sword's sword momentum under everyone's shocked gazes and swept the violent sword away. However, the scarf still lightly pierced toward the Heavenly Spine Sword's throat. The Heavenly Spine Sword widened its eyes in shock and anger. It never expected that the sword that it had gathered all of its power for was actually unable to block that light scarf. All the gamblers' mouths were wide open in shock. That light scarf was still weak in their eyes, but for some reason, everyone believed that this scarf could pierce through the Heaven Spine Sword's throat and kill the Heaven Spine Sword. Wan, who was only ranked 32nd among the extreme immortals, was already so powerful that she could instantly kill the Heavenly Spine Sword, who was ranked 23rd among the extreme immortals. However, a hand blocked the Heavenly Spine Sword's throat and firmly grasped the scarf that was enough to take the Heavenly Spine Sword's life. It was Gu Yiqian. The unstoppable Heavenly Spine Sword couldn't block the scarf, but Gu Yiqian only used one hand to block the weak and terrifying scarf. Everyone was in an uproar again. They finally understood that what Wan said just now was true. Wan of the evil faction had only killed the Heavenly Spine Sword in passing. The real battle belonged to Wan and Gu Yiqian. I was hoping that you would thank me for killing him for you. Wan didn't look surprised at all. She still looked at Gu Yiqian with a smile. Gu Yiqian didn't look at the Heavenly Spine Sword from beginning to end. If he dies, my master won't be able to live either. I understand. Wan nodded. Whoosh. The scarf had already retracted and wrapped around Wan's arm again. Go down, Gu Yiqian said indifferently. The Heavenly Spine Sword's face was pale. Only now did he understand just how many people were stronger than him. His face was already white. Being looked down upon like this, he couldn't refute it. Only Wan and Gu Yiqian were left in the arena. I thought the threefold palace would control you. Wan smiled. Her smile was enchanting and could make many men go crazy for her. However, she never thought that her smile could charm this person. Because he was Gu Yiqian. They can't control me, Gu Yiqian said simply. People with strong willpower can't be controlled by the threefold palace's shameful methods. Wan nodded. Why does the threefold palace want me to kill the two of you? Gu Yiqian asked. The other was naturally referring to Shimin Wujia. Gu Yiqian came to kill Wan, but he only came to kill Wan. He didn't even know the reason. Because they can't control us either, Wan casually replied. If they can't control you, they will destroy you. So that's how it is. Gu Yiqian understood why he came here. He slowly unsheathed the sword on his back and said, You have the right to make me unsheathe my sword. Wan was very strong. Gu Yiqian respected his opponent. This is our evil faction's casino. I don't want the arena to be destroyed, Wan said. I understand, Gu Yiqian calmly replied. A tribulation passing expert could destroy heaven and earth with a single move. Everything within a radius of a few thousand meters would be reduced to nothing. However, since Wan brought it up, Gu Yiqian would abide by it. The sword that was riddled with scars fell into Gu Yiqian's hand. It looked like it would break into pieces at any moment. However, When Gu Etienne held the sword in his hand, the sword seemed to become one with him. Gu Etienne's originally unremarkable qi condensation aura suddenly became incomparably sharp. It was as if his entire body was a sharp sword that pointed straight at the sky. No one dared to look down on that lousy sword anymore, because that lousy sword had become the focus of the entire arena. Everyone's breathing stopped, and their heartbeats slowed. They were afraid that if they made any abnormal sound, they would become a ghost under that lousy sword. Holding the sword, swinging the sword, unsheathing the sword. Gu Etienne's movements were very simple. His gaze was also very cold. However, these three simple movements caused the entire open-air casino to undergo an earth-shattering change. The heavens and earth seemed to change color because of that broadsword. All the aura swept over that broadsword. That sword was even more terrifying than the Heavenly Spine sword. If the Heavenly Spine sword's sword aura was a surging river, then Gu Etienne's sword was a vast sea. Its aura was majestic and terrifying. Wan moved. She didn't move when dealing with the Heavenly Spine sword, but she had to move when fighting Gu Etienne. The weak white veil swept out again and circled around her. Her entire body was like a dancing butterfly. The veil let out a soft sound in the air. It was crisp and pleasant to the ear, but it was also filled with a soul-seeking aura. Ding! The white veil collided with the tip of the broadsword. The sharp sword aura and violent spirit energy intertwined with each other with the two of them as the center. A battle between tribulation-passing experts could destroy heaven and earth, but the entire arena was undamaged. Both of them controlled their strength and focused all their attacks on one point. They didn't deviate at all and didn't leak out at all. All the gamblers present held their breaths. They were even considering whether to leave this place to avoid being implicated. However, none of them wanted to miss a battle between two peak experts. To be able to witness such a battle was worth it, even if they died. Buzz! The aura of the broadsword and the veil exploded. Both of them took a step back at the same time. Kacha! Kacha! A cracking sound came from the arena beneath their feet. The crack wasn't big and was almost invisible. However, the entire arena was silent. Everyone was a cultivator, and their ears were very sensitive. They had already heard the two sounds. It seems that we've both broken the rules, Gu Etienne said indifferently. Wan chuckled. Her smile seemed to make the sun dim in comparison. You didn't use your full strength, Wan said. I don't want to kill you, but I have to kill you. Gu Etienne raised the sword in his hand again. For his master, he had to kill the other person. The air was very oppressive. A powerful aura swept through the entire open-air casino. But at this moment, it was as if an aura had torn apart the oppressive membrane here, allowing the spring breeze to blow in. A battle with apprehensions is the most boring. An indifferent voice resounded throughout the open-air casino. No one knew what was going on, but a figure suddenly appeared on the stage. This figure appeared so suddenly that it was as if he had been standing there from the beginning. Muyu! All the gamblers exclaimed. They recognized that figure. It was Sword Shadow, Chun Feng's disciple, the genius who had created amazing battle records everywhere. Muyu! Little brother Muyu, we meet again. Wan smiled sweetly and threw a flirtatious look at Muyu. Wan, I shouldn't be your hobby, Muyu said with a smile. Wan had a fetish for uncles. She didn't like pretty boys. Many people knew this. You haven't revived Uncle yet? Wan's eyes became very sad. She had always had feelings for Deadwood. Muyu shook his head indifferently. Gu Etienne's sword slowly fell and turned to Muyu. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. I was just about to look for you, Gu Etienne said. I'm already here, Muyu said with a smile. Little Shuai sat on Muyu's shoulder and gnawed on a bunch of hawthorns. He wasn't interested in the battle here. The crunching sound of chewing spread throughout the casino. It was the strangest sound here. You know I want to kill you. Gu Etienne's voice had become heavy. You can't kill me right now, Muyu said. At the Qiantian school in the Mayan mountain range, Gu Etienne lost to Muyu once. Are you so sure? Your heart isn't calm enough. A person with an unstable heart has an unstable sword, Muyu said. Gu Yiqian didn't say anything, but the heavenly spine sword sneered again. Gu Yiqian, kill Muyu and Wanwan. This is your mission. Muyu's eyes were very clear. He sized up the heavenly spine sword and revealed a thoughtful expression. Chapter 1054. Many people in the cultivation world knew that Gu Yiqian had defeated Heavenly Spine Sword. It was also that battle that made everyone understand just how deep Gu Yiqian had hidden his strength. Heavenly Spine Sword was like a mouse whose tail had been stepped on. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. Gu Yiqian, what are you still standing there for? If he doesn't die, your master will die. Heavenly Spine Sword said fiercely. He didn't like people exposing his scars. Gu Yiqian clenched his sword tightly. The sword that was full of cracks let out a soft hum. Muyu looked at Heavenly Spine Sword and smiled faintly. Heavenly Spine Sword, are you working for Threefold Palace willingly? So what if I am? The dignity of Threefold Palace is sacred and inviolable. The entire Threefold continent is led by Threefold Palace. I'm just adapting to the situation. Heavenly Spine Sword sneered. You're not controlled by the divine soul formation. It seems like killing you isn't too unjust. Muyu said. Heavenly Spine Sword laughed loudly. If you want to kill me, you'll have to ask Gu Yiqian first. Gu Yiqian sternly said to Muyu, you can't kill him. Muyu turned his head and said to Little Handsome, who was on his shoulder, lend me this hawthorn skewer. Then you have to remember to return me 2 skewers. Oh no, 3 skewers, 4 skewers will do. Little Handsome reluctantly handed the bamboo skewer that only had 1 hawthorn left over to Muyu. This hawthorn is not bad. Muyu sized up the hawthorn skewer that Little Handsome handed to him. The last hawthorn on the skewer still had icing on it and a bite mark from Little Handsome. Muyu flicked his hand, and the last hawthorn on the skewer flew toward Heavenly Spine Sword. It was only a hawthorn, but it contained an extremely powerful sword chi. It was as if it contained a divine sword, fierce and domineering. Heavenly Spine Sword's pupils constricted. He was shocked to find that he couldn't block this terrifying hawthorn skewer. How was this possible? He was a genius of Sword Cleansing Valley. Yet he couldn't beat Gu Yiqian's chopsticks, block Wanwan's scarf, and dodge Muyu's hawthorn skewers. The Heavenly Spine Sword's confidence had been greatly damaged. He was also in the Tribulation Realm. How could he be so weak in front of these 3 people? He couldn't accept it. I said, you can't kill him. Gu Yiqian frowned and reached out to grab the hawthorn skewer. Whoosh! Gu Yiqian's speed was extremely fast. His hand also contained a powerful sword intent as it collided with the hawthorn skewer. The last hawthorn with teeth marks was grabbed by Gu Yiqian. However, a bloody hole had appeared on the Heavenly Spine Sword forehead. Gu Yiqian caught the hawthorn, but he didn't catch the bamboo skewer. The hawthorn skewer pierced through the center of the Heavenly Spine Sword's forehead, extinguishing his life force. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The Heavenly Spine Sword died, just like that. The Heavenly Spine Sword, who was ranked 23rd on the Supreme Celestial Leaderboard, had actually been killed by Muyu's bamboo stick. Boom! The Heavenly Spine Sword's corpse fell to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. It was as if it had smashed into everyone's hearts. Every gambler was shocked. Gu Yiqian's cold expression turned into incomparable anger. I said, you can't kill him. Muyu said indifferently, in my eyes, I will definitely kill those who deserve to die. No matter what reason he has, I can't kill him. After coming out of the Moyen Mountain Range and experiencing so much, he understood that he couldn't be soft-hearted when dealing with enemies. If there was a reason to kill him, he had to kill him as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would only be a burden to himself. Gu Yiqian was unable to restrain his anger. The hawthorn in his hand had already been crushed into powder. If he dies, my master will die too. He had made any compromises for Boyongdaoren. If it hadn't been for Boyongdaoren, who had brought him out of the academy and given him the opportunity to come into contact with cultivation, he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he had today. Boyongdaoren was his everything. He would never gamble with Boyongdaoren's life. Muyu said slowly, you're wrong. Even if he dies, your master won't die. Because to the threefold palace, your master's life is more valuable than the heavenly spine sword. Gu Tian was stunned. If something happens to Boyong Daoren, will you still listen to the threefold palace? Mu Yu continued. The battle between the Shen immortals on the supreme immortal ranking was getting more and more serious. The variables in the battle between the 9 Shen immortals were getting bigger and bigger. The threefold palace had to grab all the chips they could, and Gu Tian was one of them. Gu Tian's strength was enough to contend with Mu Yu and the others in the supreme immortal steel, but the heavenly spine sword wasn't. Therefore, the heavenly spine sword could die, but Boyong Daoren couldn't. Gu Tian's expression gradually eased. He only worshipped power in his heart. He was very straightforward and didn't know how to turn around. Ha ha ha. Mu Yu, you're really smart. A cold laugh spread through the entire open-air casino. 2 hooded men in black appeared on the stage. Tribulation passing stage. 2 more tribulation passing stage experts. All the gamblers were shocked. They felt that today's trip was worth it. To be able to witness so many tribulation passing stage experts, they would have no regrets even if they died. If a useless person dies, then so be it. But your master is clearly still useful. One of the men in black glanced at the heavenly spine sword's corpse. The heavenly spine sword's death didn't matter to them. The threefold palace only valued people who could truly do things for them. Gu Tian gripped his broadsword tightly. His undulating chest gradually calmed down. But if you don't complete your mission today, your useless master won't be able to keep his only arm. Not only his arm, I guarantee that he'll lose both his legs too. He'll truly become a limbless piece of trash. The other man in black said coldly. The veins on Gu Tian's wrist bulged. He glared angrily at the 2 powerful men in black. The anger in his heart burned through his chest. Mu Yu, you killed Shi Hongyi. How dare you appear here so brazenly? I really admire your courage. The man in black laughed. His words once again reverberated throughout the entire casino. Everyone was stunned. Shi Hongyi? Shi Hongyi, who was ranked 8th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard, had died at the hands of Mu Yu. This Mu Yu, has he become so powerful? Name. Mu Yu stared at the 2 men in black. These 2 men were very powerful. They were at least at the 9th level of the tribulation passing stage. Qi Xiangxing, Lu Mingyuan. The 2 shadowy figures slowly reported their names. Everyone was so shocked that they couldn't speak. Qi Xiangxing, ranked 7th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. Lu Mingyuan, ranked 6th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. The entire open-air casino was almost boiling with excitement. However, the pressure of a tribulation passing stage cultivator was so great that it forcibly suppressed their excitement. No one dared to say a word, let alone take a breath. Wan slowly walked to Mu Yu's side. So now it's 3 against 2. Little brother Mu Yu, I love to win with the few against the many. Mu Yu looked at the 3 men in front of him. Gu Tian was very powerful. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan weren't weak either. The 3 of them weren't any weaker than Mu Yu and Wan. If they really fought, it would be hard to say who would win. All the gamblers in the casino held their breaths. This was going to be an unprecedented battle. The 5 tribulation passing stage prodigies on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard were gathered here. Today would definitely become the focus of the cultivation world attention. Did you come prepared? Mu Yu asked indifferently. We've always been prepared to kill you, Qi Xiangxing said coldly. Gu Tian raised his broadsword again and pointed it at Mu Yu. I'm sorry, but I have to kill you. Also, Gu Tian's eyes were filled with battle intent. I've always wanted to fight you again. I'll satisfy you. Mu Yu waved his hand at the iron fence of the casino in the distance. A huge piece of iron appeared in his hand. He raised his hand, and the iron seemed to be made of mud in his hand. He forged an iron sword that was identical to the shadow clone sword. Gu Tian furrowed his brows. Use your heavenly sword, Gu Tian said. This sword is enough, Mu Yu said. The shadow clone sword in his hand was a heavenly sword that could communicate with heaven and earth. It was extremely powerful, But Gu Etien's broadsword was only an iron sword. Gu Etien shook his head. I don't want to take advantage of you. The sword in my hand is my brother. No matter how ordinary it is, it's still a divine weapon. You're not familiar with the sword in your hand, so it can't unleash your full strength. We both use swords. With a sword in our hearts, all things are swords. Why should we care about what the sword in our hands is? Mu said. Gu Etien's eyes lit up. Mu Yu's understanding of the sword coincided with his. After a while, Mu Yu continued, My heavenly sword only slays evil people. Gu Etien slowly put his broadsword back on his back. Whoosh! The iron fence in the distance also flew into Gu Etien's hand. He instantly forged it into a broadsword. In that case, it's fair for us. Gu Etien waved his brand new broadsword. With a sword in my heart, all things are swords. A brand new broadsword and a brand new shadow clone sword. The swords suddenly released a sharp cold light at the same time. Gu Etien still only swung his sword. It was very simple and very heavy. It was so heavy that the entire void was about to collapse, as if it couldn't withstand such a terrifying sword intent. The sword light was so domineering that it seemed like it would destroy the entire casino in the next moment. No one doubted this, because Gu Etien was capable of doing this. Gu Etien's sword only had one move. It was a move that charged forward bravely. It was a simple sword move that no one could find a flaw in. Mu Yu also stabbed out with the iron sword in his hand. His sword was only a single sword, but in everyone's eyes, it had already transformed into a myriad of illusions. Faintly, there were 9 sword shadows sweeping out, and the 9 sword moves pierced out from different angles. Those 9 sword moves were actually so powerful, and each one of them had transformed into another sword move, complementing each other perfectly without any flaw. The 9 sword moves suddenly condensed into one sword at a certain moment. The sword move was still simple, but it was mixed with a profound sword intent. 9 by 9 return to 1, the Great Tao, is simple. It was also a simple sword move, but each simple sword move contained a different sword intent. Their sword intents had already exceeded the knowledge of everyone present. The sword intent formed a raging wave around the two of them. It was as if 2 sword gods were clashing, and the world was about to collapse in the next moment. However, the arena was still intact. Their sword intents still hit the same point. No one let the violent sword intent waste in unnecessary places, nor did they destroy the arena. People who could destroy all things weren't necessarily true experts. People who could protect all things were true experts, because protecting was more difficult than destroying. Their sword intents finally collided. In everyone's eyes, there were only these 2 insufferably arrogant young men. Chapter 1055. The duel between the 2 swordsmen made everyone's hearts jump to their throats. In front of this terrifying sword intent, it didn't matter who won or lost. They were all subdued by this powerful sword intent. This was a realm that the gamblers present could never reach. No one dared to guess which side was stronger. However, the other 2 unrelated people on the stage moved. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan's bodies had already appeared with a sacred white light. 8 soul beads appeared around them. They were sacred and majestic like 2 gods. But their target was actually Mu Yu. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill Mu Yu. Shameless. It was unknown who shouted, but all the gamblers roared angrily. This was the duel between Gu Etien and Mu Yu. They were fighting fair and square, but the winner hadn't been decided yet. But Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan from the Threefold Palace actually took this opportunity to attack Mu Yu. They wanted to take advantage of Mu Yu's distraction to interfere with this duel. Taking advantage of others' difficulties was the most despicable thing. The 2 people from the Threefold Palace were shining with a sacred light. They were originally the symbol of authority in the cultivation world. But at this time, in the eyes of all the gamblers, these so-called gods were actually so ugly. They didn't dare to fight fair and square. They actually wanted to take advantage of the situation. Are all of you from the Threefold Palace so shameless? Wan Wan had been paying attention to Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan's movements. Almost at the same time as the two of them moved, the veil on Wan Wan's body also moved. The veil that filled the sky wrapped around Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. Wan Wan's veil was suffused with a casual but powerful aura. Even Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't dare to underestimate it. Lu Mingyuan was surrounded by the veil. His white soul power collided with Wan Wan's veil, erupting with a terrifying wave. But Qi Xiangxing had already passed through Wan Wan's veil and continued to move towards Mu Yu. Wan Wan could only block one person. We from the Threefold Palace don't need to pay attention to any principles. As long as we kill you, we can talk about anything. Qi Xiangxing laughed loudly. His laughter seemed incomparably sacred as it reverberated throughout the entire casino, causing everyone to be infuriated. The people from the Third Palace are really shameless. So we all believed in the wrong Sansheng. The gamblers roared, but Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't seem to care that their identities as level 3 palaces were exposed. Because in their eyes, after today, the entire casino city would be a dead city. They wanted to kill everyone in Las Vegas. Even if the dead knew their identities and knew their dirty tricks, they would not be able to speak, let alone spread the news. Soul Technique Luo Yin, Heaven-Shaking Hammer. The 8 soul pearls around Qi Xiangxing had already formed a sparkling white sledgehammer. This sledgehammer squeezed the space and smashed down towards Mu Yu. The terrifying aura seemed to shatter the starry sky and to shake heaven and earth. Immediately after, the sledgehammer turned blood red. It was so strange. The blood red color was the blood protection shrouding the heavens that the people of the Third Palace had used to deal with Mu Yu. Die for me. Qi Xiangxing laughed evilly. He was very confident in his soul technique. If it was 1 against 1, he might not be able to kill Mu Yu. But at this time, Mu Yu would definitely be destroyed by his sledgehammer. But Mu Yu's eyes were not flustered at all. Just like Gu Yiqian, their eyes flashed with cold sword intent. They only had each other. A clown's trick like the Third Palace would not affect him at all. The sword intents of the two swords converged at one point. All of the sword intents suddenly exploded from that point. The sword intents that were in a stalemate seemed to have found an outlet. The two completely different sword intents were originally opposing each other, but at this time, they merged together. It was like 2 nimble dragons coiling around each other. Together, they rushed towards Qi Xiangxing's sledgehammer. Boom! That despicable sledgehammer, under the attack of the 2 sword intents, was instantly shattered into thousands of pieces. It scattered in the air, seemingly unable to withstand a single blow. How is this possible? Qi Xiangxing revealed a look of disbelief. He never thought that this would happen. In his eyes, Gu Yiqian and Mu Yu were in a stalemate. At this time, he had launched a sneak attack on Mu Yu. Mu Yu would undoubtedly die. But at this time, the sword intents of Mu Yu and Gu Yiqian joined together to attack him. That was the sword intents of Mu Yu and Gu Yiqian. Neither of their cultivations were weaker than Qi Xiangxing, let alone the two of them joining forces to attack. Whoosh! The 2 sword intents destroyed the sledgehammer and continued forward. They directly pierced through Qi Xiangxing's shoulder, cutting off half of his body and tearing it apart. Ah! Qi Xiangxing let out a shrill scream. Losing half of his body caused his entire body to twist and contort. He roared in shock and anger. But he was not an ordinary person. Even losing half of his body did not kill him. He quickly retreated and rushed into the crowd of gamblers. He grabbed several hundred gamblers and directly turned them into clouds of blood mist. He fused them into his body and healed his injuries. All of the gamblers in the open area screamed in horror. They never thought that such an inconceivable scene would occur. Qi Xiangxing's sinister sneak attack did not succeed. Instead, half of his body was cut off. But Qi Xiangxing used the lives of gamblers to heal himself. Triple Palace, it's a demon. It's a despicable and shameless demon. All of the gamblers roared. Their angry voices combined with a powerful life force. It pulled at the white holy soul force on Qi Xiangsheng and Lu Mingyuan's body. The holy soul force was suppressed into their bodies, causing them to reveal their ugly appearances. This was a dirty creature. Its skin was dry and wrinkled, and its sharp teeth were jagged. It was completely different from the holy feeling it gave off earlier. Ugly things only dared to stay under black clothes for the rest of their lives. They cannot stand the aura of life. Today, all of you will die, Qi Xiangsheng roared. His ugly face looked even more ferocious and hateful. Many gamblers were frightened. They wanted to escape, but the powerful pressure of the crossing calamity stage made them unable to move. Their legs were no longer listening to them. They could not escape. Lu Mingyuan also landed beside Qi Xiangsheng. He stared coldly at Gu Yiqian and said, "Gu Yiqian, if you dare to attack us, then your trash master will not be able to live." Gu Yiqian clenched his fists and said coldly, "This is my battle with him. I will not allow anyone to interfere. If you want me to do something, then you must let me solve it in my own way." He had a straightforward personality, so he did not like the treacherous and cunning people of the Triple Palace. He did not like to play tricks. He did not want to win without fighting. Lu Mingyuan sneered. "In your own way? You think too highly of yourself. You are our puppet, so you have to do things our way. You have ruined our plans time and time again. Then there is no need to keep Boyang Doran's last arm. This is my warning to you. Tian Hoyang, cut off that trash's arm." Everyone was shocked. The famous crossing calamity stage elder of Stargate, Tian Hoyang, was also here. Swish! A bloody right arm fell out of the void and smashed in front of Gu Yiqian. "No, no, no, master, master." Gu Yiqian saw the bloody old arm and was completely flustered. Boyang Doran only had one arm left. Now, even his remaining arm had been lost. Gu Yiqian felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. He took 2 steps back and the fierce momentum dissipated from his body. "Don't hurt my master. I beg you don't." Gu Yiqian's eyes were red and his whole body was trembling. Lu Mingyuan sneered and said, "Then pull out your sword and kill Muyu. If you can't kill Muyu, then I will cut off your master's legs, gouge out his eyes, cut off his ears and nose. But I won't let him die. I want you to understand that your master's fate is in your hands." Tens of thousands of gamblers stared in shock at the ugly creature's words. Lu Mingyuan, ranked 6th on the extreme immortal rankings, was actually so vicious. He was so vicious that he would torture Gu Yiqian's master to force Gu Yiqian to do what they wanted. Gu Yiqian trembled as he drew out his sword. His whole body was filled with violent anger. He looked at Muyu and said, "I'm sorry, I have to kill you. I can't let my master. I can't. I won't let someone I respect get hurt either." Muyu said slowly, "The two of us are very similar in some ways. I have always regarded you as a respectable opponent. Opponents shouldn't have any worries. I'm sorry, I have to protect my master." Gu Yiqian had already raised the broken sword in his hand. The broken sword, which was riddled with scars, burst with an extremely terrifying sword will. Every crack seemed to contain sword chi. The broadsword seemed to be formed by the fusion of countless sword chis. Muyu continued, "So I've helped you get rid of your worries. I have to kill you. I have to." Gu Yiqian's sword energy had become very chaotic. It was chaotic but powerful. The arena had cracked, and the gully spread out from under his feet towards Muyu. However, he still didn't use his sword. He didn't like this kind of force battle. He wanted to fight fair and square. Lu Mingyuan shouted coldly, "Gu Yiqian, what are you waiting for? Do you want me to let Tian Hoyang cut off your master's legs?" Muyu looked at Lu Mingyuan and said indifferently, "Go ahead and try. Tian Hoyang, cut off Boyang Doran's legs." Lu Mingyuan snorted coldly. "No, wait, I'll do it. I'll do it." Gu Yiqian said in a panic. He stepped on the tip of his foot and rushed towards Muyu like an arrow. But at this moment, an old and urgent voice sounded. "Yiqian, stop. I'm fine." Gu Yiqian's body suddenly stopped in the air. "Master!" Gu Yiqian turned around. 2 people were standing below the arena. One was Tian Ran, who was wearing a green dress, and the other was Boyong. Tian Ran was supporting Boyong. Boyong right arm was still intact. Master, you're fine? Gui Tian was stunned. How could this be? Lu Mingyuan's ugly expression suddenly stiffened and became incomparably ferocious. Impossible. How could a piece of trash like you escape? Tian Hoyong. What are you doing? Are you calling this person? Tian Ran snorted and waved her hand. Tian Hoyong fell from the air with a bang and landed in front of Lu Mingyuan. Everyone looked at Tian Hoyong in astonishment. At this time, Tian Hoyong was already a corpse. He had been dead for a long time and was missing a right arm. The bloody right arm just now came from Tian Hoyong. The audience was in an uproar. Chapter 1056. Master. Gui Tian rushed to Boyong side and sighed in relief when he saw that Boyong was unharmed. However, his body still trembled uncontrollably, and his face was still filled with worry. He remembered that the threefold palace had planted a powerful soul technique in Boyong body. It was enough to take Boyong life with a single thought. I'm fine. This lady saved me. She also removed the soul technique on me. Boyong face was pale, but he didn't seem to be in any danger. Thank you, thank you. Gui Tian looked gratefully at Tian Ran. Tian Ran smiled. No need to thank me. Muyu asked me to do this. He also taught me how to remove the threefold palace's soul technique. I've already handed your master over to you. You should take good care of him. Tian Ran appeared beside Muyu in a flash. A bit slow, Muyu said with a faint smile. Can't help it. It wasn't easy to kill Tian Hoyong and Tian Yuanwan, but we made it in time. Tian Ran stuck out her tongue. Tian Ran, Jie, if you had been a bit late, Muyu would have really fought Gui Tian. We wouldn't have been able to delay them for long. Little Shuai jumped onto Tian Ran's shoulder and bit into his drumstick as if no one else was around. Little Shuai had been eating his own food since the beginning. Even when Muyu and Gui Tian fought, he stood on Muyu's shoulder and watched the show. The so-called delay had nothing to do with him. It's good that you're here. Muyu shook his head. If he fought Gui Tian, he would have had to go all out. Gui Tian was a powerful opponent, and both sides would have been injured. If that happened, there would have been no chance of winning against the Threefold Palace. Good thing you're fine. Those two from the Threefold Palace are really strong. Speaking of which, the Shadowless clan is really well informed, Tian Ran said. Muyu heard about Gui Tian from Shangguanlin and rushed to Casino City. When he arrived at Casino City, he saw the two people from Sanchong Palace, as well as Tian Hoyong and Tian Yuan holding Boyong hostage. They were also in a corner of Casino City. Today, Gui Tian came to kill Wan. If Gui Tian and Wan fought, it was hard to say who would win. If they wanted to stop Gui Tian, they had to save Boyong. However, it was impossible for Muyu and Tian Ran to rescue Boyong from these four people. Neither Qi Xiangxing nor Lu Mingyuan was weaker than Muyu, so they could only split up with Tian Ran. Muyu appeared to attract Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan, while Tian Ran was responsible for dealing with Tian Hoyong and Tian Yuanwan, who were relatively weaker. Muyu knew that as soon as he appeared in the arena and killed Tian Jian, the two people from the Threefold Palace would definitely appear to deal with him. That would be the best time for Tian Ran to rescue Wan. Tian Ran was also very strong. Like Muyu, her strength couldn't be judged by her cultivation level. It was not a problem for her to deal with Tian Hoyong and Tian Yuanwan. Fairy of the Red Dust Sect, I really miscalculated. I didn't expect you to become so strong in just a few months. Lu Mingyuan looked at Tian Ran coldly. Tian Ran's appearance caused a stir again. The Fairy of the Red Dust Sect, one of the 8 sects, had been uprooted and no longer existed. However, Tian Ran appeared here, which was surprising. Although Tian Ran was a few years younger than Wan, her appearance and talent were not inferior to the evil sect's Jade Maiden Wan. Sister Tian Ran is here, so how many of us should we fight now? Wan covered her face and chuckled. She turned to look at Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. In this battle, the number of people on both sides kept changing. Everyone was a genius who was evenly matched, so the number of people determined the advantage. Miss Tian ran. Can you help me take care of my master? I want to kill my enemy with my own hands. Gui Tian helped Boyang Daoren over and said. Tian ran, tilted her head, and thought for a moment. She looked at Mu Yu questioningly. However, Mu Yu said, Little Shuai, you go take care of him. It's not so simple here. Okay, I'll cheer for you. Little Shuai flew and landed on Boyang Daoren's shoulder. Gui Tian glanced at Little Shuai. He didn't know the ability of this little beast, but he didn't say anything. The four of them faced Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The gap in strength had been pulled apart. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't panic at all. Instead, he sneered. You want to save the entire gambling city with just the four of you? Mu Yu calmly said, We're not here to save people. Gui Tian's sword burst out with killing intent. We're here to kill. The fierce aura of the four people swept out, suppressing the soul power of Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The aura of the entire enormous open-air casino was overflowing. As long as any side made a move, the entire open-air casino would be destroyed in an instant. The atmosphere was quiet to the extreme. At this time, the gamblers also realized that something was wrong, because an earth-shattering battle was about to break out here. The consequences of 6 passing calamity stage cultivators making a move were far from as simple as just controlling their abilities to not destroy the arena. If they were careless, everyone's life would be in danger. The tens of thousands of gamblers were already panicking to the extreme, but no one dared to move. The powerful aura suppressed them to the point that they could only sit obediently on the spot. No one dared to make any unnecessary movements, afraid that if they moved, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. They could only watch all of this in a panic, watching this unprecedented gamble. It seems like we're in time. Swish. Another sacred white light fell beside Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The appearance of this aura made everyone's breathing stagnate again. Another passing calamity stage cultivator. At this moment, not a sound could be heard in the entire casino. The gamblers were no longer as excited as before. Everyone's vitality had gradually dissipated. The people from the Triple Palace once again emitted their divine soul power. It was so eye-catching that it made people revere them. The aura on their bodies was always so holy but dirty. Wu Yuzhou, you're a bit slow, Lu Mingyuan said lightly. Wu Yuzhou, rank 5th on the Supreme Immortal list. Not only me, but another person also came. Wu Yuzhou looked at the 4 people opposite him jokingly. Buzz. A terrifying aura came from above the casino. The person just took a step in the void, but everyone raised their heads in horror. Looking at the godlike figure in the air, their hearts couldn't help trembling. The Shang stage, the legendary master of the Shang stage. The stormy aura swept everyone, making the gamblers in the entire casino tremble in fear. No one expected that a master of the Shang stage would appear here. Mu Yu, you actually appeared here and walked right into the trap. This trip is really worth it. The person in the air was the envoy of the Threefold Palace who chased Mu Yu in the Moyun mountain range. Mu Yu looked at the envoy of the Threefold Palace indifferently. When he had just stepped into the passing calamity stage, he was almost driven into a corner by this person. Now he was no longer the him of the past, but the envoy still gave him a huge threat. At this time, the number of people on both sides was balanced, but everyone knew that the moment the envoy appeared, the outcome of this competition was already decided. That was a master of the Shang stage, a mighty figure who had comprehended the domain ability. Even Mu Yu and the other 3 together could not be a match for a master of the Shang stage. The ugly bastard of the Threefold Palace came very quickly. Wan Wan was still smiling, as if she did not take the envoy seriously. All the gamblers thought that Wan Wan had gone crazy. This beautiful and evil woman was very strong. No one denied this point, but the envoy was a master of the Shang stage. No matter how strong Wan Wan was, how could she dare to challenge a master of the Shang stage? The envoy looked at the ants in the arena condescendingly. In his eyes, these people were not worth mentioning at all. Even if they were the so-called proud sons of heaven, in the face of absolute strength, they were nothing. As long as he wanted, the open-air casino would be turned into ashes and the entire casino would be razed to the ground in an instant. But his eyes fell on Muyu. When he was in the Mayan mountain range, he used all kinds of means, but he did not kill this young man. Instead, he was killed by him. This kind of humiliation was unforgettable. Muyu, I admire your courage. The envoy coldly said, At this time, I thought you would hide in your rat hole and tremble. I didn't think you would actually dare to come out and court death. Muyu indifferently looked at the envoy. The moment he appeared to help Gu Yitian, he knew that today's matter would not end well. But he did not shrink back, because nothing could happen to Gu Yitian. The battle of the Xian immortals could not be without him. I thought you maggots did not dare to show your faces. Why did you suddenly think of coming out? Muyu responded with equal harshness. The shadow sword was already trembling in his hand. The immortal Du sword and the shadow sword touched each other, and the power of the two heavenly swords continued to rise. The envoy seemed to have also noticed this. The shadow sword Chun Feng's 9 heavenly swords still made him afraid. He knew how powerful the heavenly swords would be when they connected to the sky. Even if he thought that with the cultivation of Muyu and Tian Ran, the dual sword combination would not be a threat to him, he still made a foolproof plan. You think you can escape from this city today? You are wrong. I will not give you any chance. The envoy suddenly waved his hand, and a powerful and sacred soul power burst out from his hand. His gaze became incomparably cold. Any chance to use the heavenly swords? Shua! Just like in Shannon City, the walls of the gambling city began to spread with an indestructible white soul power barrier. This barrier was enough to cut off the connection between the heavenly swords and the sky. Muyu, I didn't think that you would not learn from your mistakes and still dare to come to a place like this city. Your strongest reliance is the 2 heavenly swords. The heavenly swords are unable to connect to the sky, so just obediently accept your deaths. The envoy coldly laughed. Even if it was a cold laugh, it still sounded righteous in everyone's ears. It was as if he was carrying out a righteous judgment, sacred yet filthy. After fighting with Mu many times, the people of the 3rd layer palace all understood the heavenly swords in Muyu's hands. The heavenly swords were very powerful. In an open space, no one could stop them from connecting to the sky, and the power they could display would increase exponentially. However, in a city, it was enough to use a soul technique barrier to cut off the connection between the heavenly swords and the sky, causing the heavenly sword's power to be greatly reduced. Chapter 1057. The gambling city was very quiet, so quiet that one could hear their own breathing. For all the gamblers, this was an unparalleled gamble that could not be missed. It was brilliant beyond compare. But watching this gamble, the stakes were their own lives. On the stage, 7 figures of crossing calamity stage confronted each other, and there was also a mountain-like figure of great ascension stage suppressing everyone in the air. Muyu did not respond to the palace envoy, but looked at Wan Wan and said, Are you confident? Wan Wan smiled lightly. That depends on the situation. A gust of wind blew in the air from an unknown place, and the wind was mixed with the sound of a flute, intoxicating the soul. Flower petals fell from the sky onto the stage, and the familiar scene made all the gamblers startled. Everyone already understood who had appeared this time. The golden boy of the evil sex, the notorious Shimin Wuji. That handsome figure fell from the sky and played the flute. The sound of the flute was long and sad, and then dissipated among the flower petals. I thought Wan Wan would be able to deal with it by yourself. It's really disappointing. Shimin Wuji lazily put away the flute in his hand, leisurely walked to Wan Wan's side, and hugged Wan Wan's slender waist without any scruples. Your waist is really getting thinner and thinner. Shimin Wuji laughed unscrupulously. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva in their hearts. Other than Shimin Wuji, There was no other person who dared to touch Wan Wan so unscrupulously. My waist is thin, but it's not for you to touch. Wan Wan lightly waved her hand, and Shimin Wuji's hand was swept away from her waist. Shimin Wuji shrugged his shoulders, somewhat disappointed, and looked at Muyu. Little brother Muyu and little sister Tian Ran are so close, and they are also fellow disciples. Wan Wan, why don't you learn from them? Fellow disciples should love each other. Tian Ran glared at Shimin Wuji. She naturally knew about Shimin Wuji. I was just thinking about when you would appear. Muyu laughed. The southern 50-mile garden was attacked by the Sanchong Palace, and as a member of the evil sex, it was impossible for Shimin Wuji not to know. Today, someone came to Gambling City to cause trouble. So how could Shimin Wuji just sit by and watch? That's right. I'm here today to collect a debt. Shimin Wuji lazily combed his long hair, and his gaze suddenly became incomparably deep. When the people from Threefold Palace saw Shimin Xiaochu appear, they still did not put Shimin Xiaochu in their eyes. Shimin Wuji was very strong, but he was still not at the great vehicle stage. The palace emissary smiled contemptuously. Unlucky Shimin, I was still thinking of looking for you, but you delivered yourself to my door. Shimin Wuji indifferently asked. The 50-mile garden in the south was created by your Threefold Palace. The palace emissary sneered. I thought I could kill the two of you in the 50-mile garden in the south. I didn't expect the two of you to slip through the net. Now that I've caught both of you, it can be considered a complete victory. Catch them together? You? Shimin Wuxing opened his evil underworld fan with a walla sound. This legendary evil fan, Shimin Wuxing rarely used it in front of everyone. The smile on the palace envoy's face became more and more arrogant. What? Do you think there's any chance of escaping this time? You're stupid because you stepped into our spirit technique enchantment. Ha ha ha. The entire huge gambling city was already shrouded in a spirit technique enchantment. A sacred white light enveloped the entire city, making it look very magnificent. This spirit technique enchantment was extremely powerful, and it was personally activated by the palace envoy's spirit technique. Without surpassing his cultivation, it was impossible to break it. But Shimin Wuji slightly shook his head. You're too naive. I thought that as a great vehicle stage expert, your brain would be a bit smarter, isn't it? Muyu, I actually admire your masterpiece. Muyu calmly looked at the palace envoy. The people of Threefold Palace like to treat people as fools. No wonder such arrogant people have no way to convince the masses. You group of maggots can only put on airs and do some shameful little tricks. The palace envoy's smile slowly disappeared, revealing a gloomy look. Death is at hand, and you still dare to flaunt your mouth. Muyu slowly stepped out, and his eyes suddenly became sharp. The entire city, with Muyu's feet as the center, suddenly emitted an evil red light. It was as if he was stepping on empty space, causing red ripples to appear. Shwa! Dense array patterns spread out from under Muyu's feet like a spider web, covering the entire open-air casino and then the entire city. They climbed up the city walls and climbed up to the spirit technique enchantment. Those were red, demonic array patterns, and these array patterns were endowed with all kinds of evil auras. It was as if the entire gambling city had been demonized by this aura. Everything actually opened their demonic red eyes, whether it was a piece of floor, a sword, a flag, or a gambling table. The entire city had been demonized. The palace envoy's face froze, and he looked at everything in shock. How is this possible? Siep Bulo's evil spirit? Impossible. Siep Bulo is already impossible. Absolutely impossible. The demonized aura was very similar to Siep Bulo's powerful aura. The originally holy white spirit technique enchantment in the air was gradually eroded by the demonic red array patterns and turned into a red light. In the sky above the gambling city, a pair of huge red demonic eyes appeared. The eyes were a few hundred meters long, and they were cold and austere. They were filled with a biting cold evil light, and they stared at the palace envoy. Impossible. When did this happen? The palace envoy's face finally changed. Do you really think that your tricks can be carried out again and again? Do you really think that your dirty soul power is invincible in this world? Muyu indifferently looked at the palace envoy. This time, I want to see who can escape. Little brother Muyu, your array techniques have really made me have a whole new level of respect for you. Wanwan lightly laughed. The moment Muyu arrived at the gambling city, as the head of the formation glyph sect, he had already discovered that there was an evil array hidden in the gambling city. The array was engraved on a magic treasure in Wanwan's hand, and it was called the Evil Bell. This power was closely related to the demonic power that Sieb Bulo had seen on his body. It was very obvious that Sieb Bulo had left behind a protective power for his disciple. However, this power was far from enough to resist a great ascension stage expert, because Sieb Bulo's power was very difficult to control, and Wanwan was not able to fully activate the array that contained the demonic power. However, this array in Muyu's hands was a different matter. Sieb Bulo was an array master, but his disciple was not, so the array could not be fully activated. However, Jianing Chun Feng's disciple, Muyu, was the head of the formation glyph sect. If you want to play, I'll play with you until you're satisfied. Muyu modified this demonic array and made it demonize the palace envoy's spirit technique enchantment. Is that so? Then I'll destroy this enchantment and let you understand the power of absolute power. The palace envoy sneered. Soul technique Luoyin, wild underworld 7 arts. The terrifying power of the field domain exploded in an instant. The white starlight spots were suddenly covered by the blood mist. The blood mist turned into 7 white snakes that were hundreds of feet tall, lined up in a row. The huge snake heads flicked their scarlet and vicious tongues and attacked the enchantment above the casino city from different directions. All of the gamblers looked at this incomparably terrifying domain power in shock. This power had already surpassed their imaginations, and in their opinion, it was enough to wipe out everything. It could even destroy the pair of huge demonic eyes in the sky. Buzz. However, no one expected that the pair of eyes in the sky above the gambling city would actually shoot out a red light, which firmly blocked the palace envoy's attack. The entire demonic enchantment did not move in the slightest. The palace envoy's insufferably arrogant attack was like a clown in front of this enchantment. In front of Senior Siebulo, what are you? Muyu said indifferently. Although the palace envoy was powerful, his strength was at the bottom of the Great Ascension stage. How could he fight against someone as powerful as Siebulo? The palace envoy and the remaining 3 people's faces were so gloomy that water could be wrung out of them. They thought that today they had already made the preparations to turn the entire gambling city into a living hell. They had used the same trick and laid down the enchantment, preparing to catch a turtle in a jar. However, they were still too arrogant. People who were blindly arrogant were stupid. They were so stupid that they thought that others would fall for it a second time. The palace envoy had laid down the enchantment, but in the end, it became someone else's wedding dress and trapped them instead. However, the palace envoy suddenly laughed. Underestimated you. However, if you think that you can trap me like this, then you are too naive. I will let you understand that the power of a great ascension stage is not something that you can contend against with your so-called insignificant skills. In front of a great ascension stage expert, I only need to use a finger to crush you lowly ants. In the air, the powerful aura of the wild underworld 7 extremities had already locked onto Muyu and the others. In the eyes of the palace envoys, no matter how many schemes a crossing calamity stage cultivator had, they would not be able to withstand a single blow from a great ascension stage cultivator. But Muyu looked at the palace envoy mockingly. You Spiritas have never thought of learning from your mistakes, have you? Because of your arrogance, you think that your set of skills is enough to suppress everything, and you don't need to improve yourself at all, right? You have underestimated the cultivators. Do you really think that you are invincible? Isn't that so? Ants like you are nothing before our soul race. The palace emissary said with disdain. Muyu faintly smiled. The array pattern in his hand suddenly swept out. This time, the array pattern that lit up in his hand was the 8 trigrams array pattern that was filled with vitality and vitality. The formation pattern spread out from everyone in the gambling city and enveloped them. The gamblers' eyes were dazed for a moment before they gradually regained their luster. I won. I'm the final winner. Ha ha ha. I've earned 10 million. Everyone in the gambling city suddenly cheered excitedly. It was as if they had seen some grand event that made them rejoice. Everyone broke free from the oppression of the palace envoy's great ascension stage aura and began to cheer and shout excitedly. Although the gambling city was small, there were still tens of thousands of gamblers. These people were all affected by Mu Yu's illusion array, causing them to have excited hallucinations. The cheering and shouting of tens of thousands of people formed a powerful and exuberant vitality that filled the entire gambling city. It was as if the entire gambling city had become a place of surging enthusiasm and excitement. The palace envoy's complexion changed again. The white sacred soul power on the 4 of them began to be forced back. Their ugly faces were once again revealed. The vitality gathered by the cheering and shouting of the people in the entire city suppressed their soul power, causing them to be unable to raise their soul power in an instant. Then, the gambling city's celebration officially begins. Chapter 1058. The reason why the threefold palace doesn't dare to show their faces in public isn't just because the exuberant life force will cause you to reveal your true form, but also because the cheers of everyone will greatly reduce your soul force. I'm very clear about this. Mu Yu and Tian Ran shook hands, and the 2 of them smiled at each other. Fighting side by side with the person they liked the most was a pleasant feeling, and any kind of joy was a fatal technique for the Sanchong who hid their heads and showed their tails. The illusion array used by Mu Yu caused all the gamblers to see the most exciting illusion of their lives. For gamblers, the most exciting moment was nothing more than winning millions or tens of millions of dollars. It was nothing more than winning millions of dollars. It was nothing more than winning millions of dollars. It was nothing more than earning a lot of money from their bets. There were tens of thousands of gamblers in the gambling city, and everyone was imagining the grand scene of winning their bets. Everyone began to celebrate in their own unique way, and the pressure of the palace envoy was not worth mentioning at all. The life force of all the gamblers in the city gathered into a powerful force, and the soul power began to dissipate. The palace envoy and the remaining 3 members of the soul race already had ferocious expressions, and their sacred outer clothes had been torn apart, revealing their ugly, true faces. They had sharp teeth, and their skin was dry and wrinkled, just like monsters that could not be exposed to light. Even the palace envoy's great ascension stage aura had become unstable and could no longer exert any pressure on Mu Yu and the others. He could not even display the strength of a normal great ascension stage expert. Life force was the soul race's greatest enemy. Kill these gamblers for me. The palace envoy's ugly and ferocious face twitched, and the bulging blue veins made him look even more terrifying. Every time they were in a crowded place, they would slaughter people, use their aura to suppress people, and forbid everyone from cheering, because the life force gathered by cheers would make them feel weak. Now, as long as they killed these gamblers who were addicted to the illusion, the restrictive force would disappear and they would become strong again. But how could Mu Yu and the others let their wishful thinking succeed? The powerful crossing calamity stage aura completely dispersed from their bodies, and the life force formed by the 10,000 gamblers in the gambling city had no effect on them. The 5 of them formed a powerful pressure that was enough to compete with the 4 members of the soul race. Mu Yu, you 2 hold off that great vehicle stage cultivator first. We'll go over to help you once we've dealt with the remaining 3. Gu Tian was the first to rush out. The broadsword in his hand exuded a heavy sword chi. At this moment, he did not hold back and rushed towards the strongest Wu Yu state. Shimenwuji and Wan Wan went to abandon Xiangsheng and Lu Mingyuan respectively. The heavenly swords in Mu Yu and Tian Ran's hands were incomparably powerful. Their heavenly sword fusion was undoubtedly the strongest at this moment. Even if they couldn't defeat the palace envoy whose soul power was restricted, they could at least delay him for a period of time. Tian Ran, you know what I'm thinking. Mu Yu faintly smiled. The cyan wind heart-linking formation had already enveloped Tian Ran's body. The two of them instantly connected their minds. Shadow Clone and Immortal Dew. The two heavenly swords were incomparably tyrannical. I know. I won't let go of the chance to kill my enemy. Tian Ran's pure eyes shone with a resolute light. Any Spirita's monster deserved to die. Kill. It's everyone's responsibility to eliminate the little white ghouls. Little Shuai shouted excitedly on Boyong Doran's shoulder. His voice was incomparably majestic and pierced through the clouds. Boyong Doran had already retreated to the side. He was not affected by Mu Yu's illusion array and was still looking at everything in bewilderment. There was a strange aura around Little Shuai's body that protected him. Hey, old man, hurry up and shout with me. The more you cheer, the less power the little white ghouls have, and your disciple has a higher chance of winning. Little Shuai said excitedly. Is it like this? Boyong Doran was once the leader of a sect and was calm and proper. How could he lose his composure and shout randomly? Little Shuai was too lazy to explain anything to Boyong Doran. He turned into a child and rode on Boyong Doran's neck. He held two small flags in his hands and shook them excitedly. Come on, buy me delicious food. Big brother Mu Yu, come on. Beautiful, kind, and doting big sister Tian Ran, come on. Silly idiot Gui Tian, come on. Shameless Shimenwuji, come on. Bad big sister Wan Wan, come on. Little one, if you say that I'm devastatingly beautiful, I'll fight harder. Wan Wan winked at Little Shuai and dodged Xiang Sheng's soul spell. Okay, femme fatale, big sister Wan Wan, come on. Little Shuai corrected himself. Wan Wan laughed. That's acceptable. Boyong Doran finally understood what Little Shuai meant when he came to his side to cheer him on. At first, he thought it was just a joke, but in the end, a visible vitality emerged from Little Shuai's body and gathered toward the Soul Clan members. Little Shuai was 100 times more excited than those gamblers. It was 1 against 100. Ichien, be careful, you can do it. Boyong Doran was infected by Little Shuai and finally shouted this sentence. Gu Etienne's eyes became incomparably firm. Boyong Doran's words were like a cardiac stimulant, causing the broadsword in his hand to become even stronger. I will master. Wu Yuzhou was very powerful, but he encountered the equally powerful Gu Etienne. Gu Etienne relied on his powerful physical body and sword chi. Gu Etienne's sword force was simple and sharp, causing Wu Yuzhou to feel great pressure. At this time, his soul power couldn't fully display its power and was entangled by Gu Etienne's sword force. He couldn't kill those cheering gamblers at all. In just one exchange, he was repelled by Gu Etienne's sword force. Wan Wan's target was the heavily injured Qi Xiangxing. Qi Xiangxing was injured by Gu Etienne and Mu Yu's sword Qi, and now his soul power was suppressed by the powerful vitality of the gambling city. Facing the evil sect's Jade Girl Wan Wan, he had no power to resist. Shimenwuji was the most outstanding person in the Xiuzhen world, but his cultivation was not inferior to anyone. He waved his evil nether fan, and a strange white light changed into a whirlwind and surrounded Lu Mingyuan, making Lu Mingyuan unable to display his strength. Mu Yu and Tian Ran's heavenly swords pointed to the blue dome of heaven. Their monstrous aura was magnificent and powerful. The palace envoy's soul power was severely restricted, so his domain power couldn't create a strong pressure on them. Facing the heavenly swords, his malevolent face became even more resentful. Without the support of his soul power, his domain was no longer a threat to Mu Yu. The two heavenly swords were insufferably brilliant, just like divine pillars that supported the sky. Overbearing sword chi swept across the sky. The sword chi descended from the two demonic eyes in the sky, fused with the fury of the blue dome of heaven and bombarded the palace envoy's body. The palace envoy roared. His soul power transformed into 7 powerful giant snakes and bombarded the sword chi in the sky. However, the sword chi of the 2 heavenly swords overflowed the sky and actually fused with the vitality of the entire city and sent his 7 giant snakes flying. The giant snakes summoned by his 7 arts of the wild underworld were everywhere, but at this time they were suppressed by the 2 heavenly swords. His heart was incomparably sullen, and he quickly flew into the sky. He had to leave the gambling city and go to a spacious place to not be affected by those desperate gamblers. Only when he was outside would he be able to unreservedly display his great ascension realm domain. At that time, it would be enough to deal with Mu Yu and the others. There was originally a soul power barrier in the sky, but at this time, it was already swallowed by the demonic array. When the palace envoy just arrived in the sky, the 2 demonic eyes already emitted a tyrannical red light and rushed towards the palace envoy. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.